A little closer. Hey, what's up, everybody? I actually was allowed to go live right away this time, so that's exciting. I didn't do like a 30-minute or like a 10-minute warning or something for the stream because I tried that last time and then it all just got messed up by YouTube, I guess. So, hey, Lex, good to see you. Can you hear me all right? Got a lot to cover today. This doesn't really seem like it's in the right. Sorry. Maybe that'll be better. Okay, great. Thanks. Oh, wow. That's awesome. So Lex started One Piece and is 120 episodes in. Well, that means that you're, definitely into it. And it keeps getting like more and more intense with the world script. So you're in for a lot of awesome stuff. Hey, 4Jackson pushing buttons. Wow. What's up, guys? It's good to see you guys. Yeah, it's awesome that you made the stream. This one's gonna be pretty epic. I'm still on Mount Meru, but hey, Liz, awesome, thank you. All right, well, I'm just gonna jump into it, and as you guys can probably tell from my thumbnails, they tell a story, part of the world script, whatever we're particularly talking about. So we have Mad Max with the MM pyramid. You could even see like the double O portal and stuff, and if you haven't seen this 28 Years Later movie, this character's name is Spike. He's climbing to the top of the Skull Mountain. Again, with Mega Man, we have the Skull Mountain where Dr. Wily with the crazy Kraken hair and the Antichrist, persona are ruling the world from the Skull Mountain. And then the MM character from Stranger Things rising, she's in a cemetery and she's rising up with the blue and yellow and white Columbia colors for the blue beam. So, this Mount Meru symbolism is in a lot of things. I don't want to say everything because not like one single thing has all the elements of the world script in it. Some of them have more than others. Like Stranger Things has almost everything, and like the Matrix movies have almost everything. Lord of the Rings has almost everything, but I don't think anything has like all of it. So that's why once you know all of it, you can see the different elements in each different piece of media. Just say hi to some people. Final boss, good to see you. Yeah, the that's something that Jay Dreamers talks about too with the pirate skull, the skull and crossbones, the Jolly Roger. And shout out to Jay, of course. Definitely go check out his channel and subscribe to him. But the word pirate, it comes from the word pyre or pier, like PYR, which is fire. So it's and that's also the where the word pyramid comes from, which is all relating to the North Pole Mountain, which is what we're going to be primarily talking about today. And I think it's cool to keep focusing on this topic because when I show you this, MM character or MM, you know, company or whatever it may be in the particular piece of media, then I could show you how many other pieces of world script material or elements are in these things too. Like it's not just the one thing, so like there could be like a character with the MM initials, but it's not just that. Like if I were to say like Marty McFly in Back to the Future represents Mount Meru, I mean that would really mean like nothing to people, but then if I show you that at the end of the movie he's in the time traveling vehicle right under, and he's carrying the spear above him like the blue beam, and he gets hit with the plasma, and then he literally time travels. He starts off the movie as a literal pinhead. That's the name of his band, which is obviously not a good thing to be. And then by the end of the movie he becomes the Atomic Kid. He conquers space and time, and he ends up at the assembly of Christ under the blue beam. So once you add in all these factors, and of course, Back to the Future has tons of things in it. It's one of the biggest movies for the world script and for the Mandela effect. Just checking in with the chat. Oh, nice, 4 Jacks. Yeah, yeah, Jay is awesome. I learned a lot from Jay. Well, like I learned a lot about the Mandela effect, and then I found Jay's channel, and it was like, oh my god, all these things are what the Mandela effect is talking about. So um, like the two biggest influences on me were Brian Staveley and Jay Dreamers, and like when you combine that Mandela effect knowledge with the world script knowledge, it unlocks, I think probably the deepest meaning of why we're here and what's going on, because the Mandela effect is, if I believe it's God doing it, he's changing reality to send us these messages, teaching us about the world script and teaching us, what we're supposed to be doing in these end times, how we're supposed to be thinking, and just raising us, spiritually so that we're prepared when the end happens. All right, so we're still on this number 13. I will be getting to number 14 at some point, but not today. There's just too much to cover. This shot is actually from the Chronicles of Narnia movie. Notice the split mountain where the White Witch lives, or she's basically the Antichrist ruler at the time for that. And I've talked about. I'll just quickly go over these movies that I've talked about prior to this. So, like the Dark Tower, you have Matthew McConaughey. I think he was casted because of his initials, and he's after the character Jake Chambers, who's the star or the hero of the story, and his initials are JC. So he's the Jesus character, and the Antichrist who's ruling from the Dark Tower, the Mountain. He's trying to find and capture this Jesus character. And I talked about this movie a ton in the previous live stream if you're interested, because there's a lot going on there. In the movie Life Force, you could see the dome with the apex dome and the kraken tentacles coming off the sides, and the portal at the top, the eclipse, and even these are like the blue beams even. And this actress, her name is Matilda May, and she doesn't even have a name in the movie. She's just called Space Girl, and she literally has the blue beam shooting up from her because she represents that North Pole mountain, and she also has aspects of Christ and Antichrist. Because when characters have this or when something has this in these world script movies or presentations, they either represent the mountain themselves, or they represent the Jesus or Christ ruling from the mountain, or the Antichrist ruling from the mountain, or like the transition between the two. Like how Marty goes from being a pinhead, like Antichrist mentality, to being in the assembly of Christ at the end of Back to the Future. And here's Matilda May's IMDb if you're interested. Here she is with the blue beam shooting up from her. And then they're in a cathedral or a church with a dome. So you have the blue beam shooting up through the central church, which when you see like a church in the middle of nowhere, it represents the North Pole, that area. The temple, the main house, or like usually the devil's house, because we're in a world ruled by the devil. But here's the blue beam shooting up through the top of the dome. And I've talked about that in the past a lot too. Here in Back to the Future, which I talked about, you have Marty McFly representing the and the transition. Here's the sparks and the plasma. And here he is in the vehicle or the vessel, the time travel vessel that can conquer space and time, which is what we're going to be needing to do if we're going to be entering an eternal reign of Christ. And here's the plasma hitting the spear. And then it even looks like a plasma tree after he leaves, and the Y shape, and then you have the 9 and the Streets of Fire making the 11, and he goes into this theater. Here it's called the Atomic Kid, and when he gets back to where he's supposed to be, it's the Assembly of Christ. And then the Reverend is even this John Crump, but again you see the JC. So this is Jesus's, Assembly of Christ, Jesus's house, and you have the blue beams shooting up from the top as well. And in The Princess Bride, there's a character called Miracle Max, and Miracle Max is responsible for the resurrection of the hero, which is what Mount Meru does. Which is also why Mount Meru is known as Mother Mary or the Virgin Mary, because it gives the virgin birth to the blue beam, which is Jesus Christ's life force or energy. And here in The Sword and the Stone, of course, the I've talked about this a lot too, but you have the blue beam and the sword, they represent the same thing. This is also a Mandela effect where the sword or the stone turned into an anvil. I've talked about that a lot in the past. I don't want to rehash too many things because I've got a lot to cover today. But in this story, you have a character named Madame Mim, and she's a witch who, controls from this evil forest inside of this dark tower, which is, of course, a big witch's hat, but it's Rupus Nigra, the Black Mountain, Mount Meru. And here she is meeting Arthur. And I've talked about this too in the past. I don't want to get too into it, but just to show you another character. And in this show, The Boys, it's one of, if not the biggest shows on Amazon. One of the characters, his name is literally MM. It's short for Mother's Milk, and that's a weird name, I know, but everyone pretty much just calls him MM. And he's a huge black dude. He represents Rupus Nigra, like the mountain itself, not necessarily the Christ or Antichrist aspects. He's actually generally kind of like a neutral character. And here he's wearing the black and white X shirt. So this is X marks the spot at the North Pole. He's also right next to this paradise painting. And I talked about this too previously, but these five people are basically the boys in the show. And the original boys were these three in the back. And so you have MM, who represents the mountain and the central pillar. And again, he's wearing the black and white shirt with the concentric circles and the X in the center for the North Pole. And then you have Frenchie, who's like the nicer one, who falls in love with this girl who represents the princess energy, who was caged and the blue beam and all that. So he's like the right pillar. He's the one who's more like empathetic. And then Butcher represents the left pillar. He's the one he always wants to like, kill and destroy and all that. And then Huey, he basically represents us. He's like the fish out of water character, the one that we can relate to. So you basically have the three pillars and the blue beam, and then the hero, which is us. And then here in Lord of the Rings, I've talked about this a lot too, but they go up Mount Meru, which is known as the Misty Mountain, and they try to go over the top of it. But I'm not going to get too into it. But Saruman creates a giant storm. They can't conquer the storm, so they have to go under the Mountain to the mines of Moria, which is another location in the same spot. But they're going under the mountain and into the realm of the dead. And this is where Gandalf, the Christ character, has to fight the Balrog, basically the devil Kraken character on the bridge, and he has to sacrifice himself so the heroes can escape the Mountain. And I've talked about this in the past too, if you want to check that out. This is also where they get attacked by the Kraken from the water, from the Black Mirror. So here, this is Mount Meru on Wikipedia. If you want to look it up, this is, the ultimate symbol here. And it all references this North Pole mountain. Hunter x Hunter, I've talked about before too. We literally watched this logo change if you were paying attention to these live streams. The physical reality literally changed while we were observing it. This is the main villain. His name is Meru M. So it's kind of like an inverse of Mount Meru. And he leads this Antichrist army. He's got this giant, tail with the needle at the end. And I've talked about this before too in the past. They also have the left eye highlighted because he's a destroyer character. And there's these religious symbols for Jesus' birth that are generally called the Nativity of our Lord or of Jesus Christ. And you have, the Virgin Mary giving birth to Jesus in this mountain cave, and then the blue beam shooting up through the mountain. And this is just in a lot of religious iconography. And you could search this on your own. There's a bunch of examples. So in the Christian religion, they're showing you this blue beam symbolism from the mountain cave, from the underworld, where, and in the story of Jesus, after he's crucified, he goes down into the underworld for 3 days and then resurrects. So I think that the blue beam, of course, hasn't been underground for 3 days. Maybe it's been, 3,000 years it's said that like a day is like 1,000 years to God, something like that. So, I mean, that's just speculation, but there is, this obvious connection here. And here's another one. There's a ton of these if you check. And Jay Dreamers has also shown a bunch of these as well. All right, and I showed this anime, Fooly Cooly, FLCL, last time. I think this is probably a Mandela effect too, where the F isn't connected and the L's are shorter. And I showed that this central mountain in their town is called Medical Mechanica. and that's the Mountain, and a bunch of stuff happens in relation to this mountain. Here it is if you want to look it up. And I talked about that a lot in the previous live stream if you want to check that out. And oh yeah, my last live stream, YouTube just cut it off. Hopefully that doesn't happen this time. But I was talking about the Matrix. So if you saw the end of that, I'll pick up where I left off. I'll recap a little bit, but I'll just try to pick up here. But let me just check in with the chat. I was checking out what you guys are saying. Yeah, the Jay's truth in movies are amazing. I've watched about half of them, and I've learned so much from that series. Hey, Mimi, good to see you. Yeah, Marty's vessel is like a Faraday cage. Final Boss is asking if I've seen From. Yeah, I haven't seen the new season yet, but From is amazing. It's like the new Lost. It's very like horror, R-rated material. So I wouldn't recommend watching it unless you don't mind, particularly gruesome things. But there's a lot of amazing stuff in that show. I was actually thinking about showing a couple things from it, but I'll have to save it because there's just too much to cover today. Yeah, Hunter x Hunter is amazing. Yeah, speak friend and enter for sure. Pushing Buttons is asking if I've heard of William Donahue. I've actually never heard of him, so I don't know. But if you want to shoot me an email or put a link somewhere, that's cool. Hey, 7 seconds. Hello from Italy. Wow, that's awesome, man. Hello to you from the United States. All right, so getting back to the Matrix. So just real quickly, when Neo's talking with the Oracle in the second Matrix movie, she's saying that when a program is obsolete, it can choose to either hide within the Matrix or it can return to the source. And then Neo goes, the machine mainframe. Yes, so here's the So the source being, this North Pole mountain, the And then later on in the movie, they say there is a building. This is the keymaster talking. Yeah, or the keymaker. And he says, inside this building, so this is the Dark Tower at the North Pole. Inside this building, there's a level that no elevator can go and no stair could reach. So it's not somewhere where you can reach through physical means. And okay, so just some examples, this is from the movie The Dark Tower by Stephen King, which is like his biggest story, basically. So you have the Dark Tower in the middle of this, dartboard concentric circle looking map. And then this is the Dark Tower that they show the actual Dark Tower in the movie with the eclipse happening right behind it. The eclipse is also symbolic of the North Pole. I have a ton of stuff on that if you're interested. And The Devil's Advocate, this is the movie they actually shot at Trump's personal location or personal home, which is, ridiculous. Like you could just shoot a movie at Trump's, private residence. This is also Mandela affected. At the very least, this C is bigger than it used to be. And I think there's some other merging going on. This A, I think, is probably lower and stretches out farther and stuff. And the devil runs the world or New York City from his dark tower, from this tall skyscraper called the Penta Plaza, which is the PP, which is another Antichrist symbol, which I've talked about in the past. Twin Peaks. So you have the duality here between the main character and the main villain. They're basically the same person, but the same person's dual nature. We're all two people, which might sound weird, but we each have two spirits, and we basically each have two brains. I know that sounds weird if you haven't looked into it, but research what happens like certain medical patients, they have their brains severed on purpose. I think it might be to like treat schizophrenia. And when their left and right brain are severed, it really becomes apparent that it's two different people. Like you can like show the left brain things and the right brain doesn't see it and vice versa. Like it really gets intense. And I think what's happening here is we're merging, we're becoming one person from being two people. And that's part of this evolutionary process inside of us spiritually. And this New York skyscraper, another dark tower, is where the evil Cooper rules the world, basically, which is basically the same thing as the tower and the Devil's Advocate. And in the Lego movie, you have President Business, who represents President Trump. He rules from this dark tower, this octan tower, like the eight, tentacles of the octopus. The tower goes up, and we have the light. It's just like in Venom too. Um, this is like the eclipse light also, and this is Stranger Things. So you have the dark tower going up to the light in Stranger Things. You have it in Venom, and you also have it in the Lego Movie. And this is also where the Kraken is stored at the top of the tower. And then President Business. This movie came out in 2014. In 2020, Trump put out the Kraken to the public. And in this movie that came out in 2014, President Business puts the Kraken out to the public on Taco Tuesday, which is TT, which is 2020. This is all scripted out. The world is scripted, and I've shown that tons of times. And here you can see the dark tower rising from the communications tower in Stranger Things, and the Kraken tentacles are coming down all around it, which is what's going to happen at the plasma apocalypse or the Armageddon event. So going back to the Matrix, we have this dark tower, and the keymaker is saying, inside the building you can't reach it with an elevator or stairs. Um, the level's filled with doors, and the doors lead many places. So this is the portals, hidden places. One door is special. One door leads to the source, and only the one can open the door. So only like the hero, the Jesus character, can open the door. And during that, and there's a window where that door can be opened. So this is something you'll also see with this portal symbolism, is portals or doors. They're only open for a certain amount of time. So I think whatever happens in the future, if it's up to us, this portal or whatever we have to do is going to be only available for a short amount of time, which is also why we need to be ready. So, speaking of From, this guy is actually the main character of From. His name is Harold Perrineau, and he's in a lot of um, world script movies and TV shows and stuff. He's in Lost. He's in The Matrix. He's in. I'll actually show you. He's in the 28 Weeks Later movie. And he's also the star of that From show. But here he's a pilot in the Matrix, and he's saying almost home, almost home. But when you see the word home, that represents paradise or the Garden of Eden or the central area at the North Pole. So he gets to his home. It's Zion, and you can see Zion has the X. So this is the North Pole area, and in the middle there's this mountain, object or machine or whatever, and it's shooting a blue beam up from the center, and they're also under a giant dome. So I mean, this is really incredible symbolism that proves all of this really, and it's just this one thing from the Matrix. So they're in Zion, they're in this X crossroads at the North Pole, and the blue beam shooting up under the dome. This is just like what you see with like the Walt Disney Castle. Like when they show you that Disney intro, it's got the four rivers, and then in the center is the castle, and there's a dome over it. It's all the same symbolism, and then the castle is shooting up through the dome basically. And this is also what the Antichrist side wants to mirror, like with the Tower of Babel, like shooting up through the dome with their own technology. So Morpheus is saying, "I know where." At the end of the third Matrix movie, he's saying, "I know where Neo and Trinity and Smith are." Smith is an imposter. They're on the Logos. And just to refresh your memory, the word Logos, so it means the rational principle that governs and develops the universe, but it also means the divine word or reason incarnate in Jesus Christ. And this is where Neo, the Jesus character, is going to the Mountain at the end of the story to defeat the Antichrist, essentially, to defeat the Kraken. And they also have control over an EMP with this ship. And this is another thing that I think will happen, is I think that Jesus's people will basically become the EMPs. But that's something I'll talk about in the future. So here they are on board the Logos, and Smith is in his imposter, character, and he's got Trinity. This is all heavy, biblical allegory and all that, and they're fighting under the dome with the Kraken tentacles and the plasma and the sparks and all that. And now Neo and Trinity are in the ship going to the source, Machine City, Split Mountain. And he says, there's our path. Can you see it? The three lines, so this is like the three pillars going towards the source. Here's the three pillars. And here's the plasma. And they're following the three pillars, and then they see the mountains. So now the North Pole area is surrounded by mountains. If you look at the Mercator map, there's mountains all around the edges. So now they see the mountains, so they're going to be entering into this North Pole area. Um, and they're still traveling. And then they do the M handhold, which I've talked about a lot too. That I think that was number 12 on this list. If you want to check that out, if you haven't seen it. And then they have to fight the hive mind robot clone Kraken army as they're going, and they're doing the M handhold as Neo is fighting the Kraken army. It's Christ versus Antichrist. Here's the Kraken, squid looking thing that Neo's fighting with the Christ pose here. And then he says we have to go up into the sky, we have to ascend. So Trinity's like, well, then up we go. Here's the fight. They're still doing the M handhold as they shoot up into the sky. Here's the M handhold still. And then they shoot up into the sky, and Trinity sees, the world the way it used to be. So this is like symbolic of the reset. But then they come down and have to fight and crash, and unfortunately, Trinity dies. She's, speared through the center, which is a typical way that Christ and Antichrist characters die in these stories. And then Neo, he was blinded by Smith, so now he's literally only seeing with his third eye or his spiritual senses. And he reaches the machine mainframe, the central source, and he looks at the ground and he sees as he's walking towards it, his footsteps are making these Vesica Pisces shapes. So when you see the Vesica Pisces, and I've talked about this a lot too, but this is the merging of worlds. And he's walking towards it. You can see all the Kraken tentacles, but it's basically like two worlds existing at the same time, where you have all these dark, machine Kraken tentacles, but then Neo sees like this glowing, world of light and golden, light and all that. And then he walks out to this ledge. We have the plasma hitting the split mountain here. This is like in the Chronicles of Narnia thing I showed you earlier, where the North Pole Mountain is often represented by this split mountain, and you have the plasma, and even the way I caught this lightning here. I mean, it looks like the mountain, shooting up the blue beam, kind of. And then you have the main machine. This is basically represents the apex dome coming up with all the Kraken, uh, you know, spikes or tentacles or things coming off the sides. And the concentric circles. And then, but in Neo's point of view, it's like this beautiful thing. So this is again with the resets, the Christ versus Antichrist, rule of the world, rule of the apex dome. And then back in Zion, the sky is literally falling. So the Kraken is drilling into the sky from the top, and the dome is crumbling down, and you have the blue beams shooting up from the center, and they're ready to do battle. You have all the people of Zion, the camp of the saints, in these wearable military machines, ready to face this Kraken horde that's about to unload on them, and they're coming through this hole in the dome, and they have the spiral portal, and then all these Kraken entities coming down through it, this is what you're watching is basically the plasma apocalypse, where you have the blue beam shooting up, the dome going away, and then the Kraken descending onto the earth. And here we have the blue beam and the giant hand coming out. And this is actually where I left off last stream, or I didn't leave it off. YouTube just cut it off. So hopefully that doesn't happen this time. I'd really like to get through all this material. So note this giant hand. This often represents the Kraken, like the Kraken fingers. They're like giant tentacles, and then over the blue beam. And this is just like what I showed in that anime Fooly Cooly, where you have This is the Medical Mechanica Mountain, and then you have the giant petrified hand over it. And I went over this story in detail last time if you're interested, but I'm just saying what you're seeing here is the same thing as this. So this would be the Mountain with the blue beam shooting up and the Kraken hand, and then here's the Mountain with the Kraken hand. And the reason it has a hole in it is because the character that represents the blue beam shot through it previously, and then it petrified, which is another symbol of what's going to happen in the plasma apocalypse. There's going to be mass petrification, which we can see all around the world if you just have the eyes to see. So many things. Old giant plants, old giant, even giants, giant humans, just all kinds of things have been petrified. A lot of the things are like giant mushrooms and things like that have been petrified from previous resets, and that's also where the Medusa character comes from, because she basically represents this apex dome head, and her hair, the snake hair, is like the kraken tentacles, and then whoever looks at her is petrified. And it's also similar to Nightmare on Elm Street. So you have Freddy with the giant, hand coming out over what's her face, Nancy, I think her name is. She's the hero of the story who doesn't want to fall asleep. She wants to stay awake, and she's also the only one wanting to actually fight against this Antichrist Kraken entity that's invading her dreams. And I think that's also what's been happening to a lot of people is this, Cthulhu Kraken entity that's outside of the dome. It's influencing people on a psychic level, so that's why we have to be tuned to Christ's signal and not this Antichrist Kraken signal. And this is also very similar to the Cabin in the Woods. This is like a must a must watch movie, I would say. Um, if you're into watching these world script stories. And they're basically like five people who think they're going on a vacation at a cabin in the woods, but they're actually trapped inside this area that's being controlled, and they're inside of a large dome. And the dome is made up of these hexagons, which is why you see that here in the poster. And then at the end of the movie, this giant hand comes up through the central, building, which the cabin represents the North Pole Mount Meru area, and then the hand coming up represents the blue beam and also the Kraken hand at the same time. So it shoots up through the building like the blue beam, but then it comes crashing down onto the screen, and then the credits roll. But that would be the Kraken coming down to Earth. And one of the characters, interestingly enough, in Cabin in the Woods, his name is Marty Mikulski. So he's the MM character, and he's one of the two people left alive at the end of the story. So here, this is Marty. He's going down underground. It's hard to see. It's pretty dark, I'm sure, but this is like a cellar door, and he goes underground. And what you'll see is these characters often have to go underground, under the North Pole Mountain, to find the truth of what's going on. So he also this girl Dana. She's the other survivor at the time, and it's hard to see because it's so dark. But there's like all these vines above them, so you'll often see like the kraken tentacles when people go under the North Pole Mountain as well. And here's like he finds like this control mechanism, and they're inside of like an elevator. So all this is like very strange. They're learning the truth. They thought they were just out in the woods, but they're actually in a giant like science experiment that also doubles as like a sacrificial program to appease these giants that live underground. So it gets very interesting. And they both I don't think they're actually holding hands, but they're kind of looking like they're doing the hand hold here as they're going down in the elevator. And then you see the villains, they have the all-seeing eye. When villains have these camera setups, this is representative of like, the Antichrist with the all-seeing eye. And then they wind up in this room at the bottom, which is where the main sacrifice takes place. And he finds out that he's the fool, and then she's the virgin, and like each character played a specific role. And it's hard to see here, but there's an abyss right next to them, and the main villain turns out to be Sigourney Weaver. And she ends up being thrown down into this abyss. It's kind of hard to see, but that's something you'll see often too, is the villain usually falls, because that represents spiritually falling, and they often fall into like an abyss or a bottomless pit type of area. And it happens in so many things. Like I showed like that Tomb Raider movie at the end of the first Tomb Raider movie, the Lara Croft hero character, she's literally on top of a pyramid that's shooting a blue beam up, and she rises up with the blue beam, and then she meets her father in the camp of the saints, her spiritual father who's dead. And then the villain, he was running up the pyramid with her, but he falls, and he falls down into the abyss. So you'll see that in many movies if you know what to look for. So then you have the two surviving characters, and one of them is the MM under the mountain. And there was something else I was going to say. Oh, so the Virgin is usually would be the MM. This would be like the Virgin Mary giving birth to Jesus, the blue beam. So it was said originally that she was the virgin and he was the fool, but it's like they got them switched, because it turns out she wasn't a virgin. And they don't like outright say it, but they hint that he is. and then that would make more sense, him being the MM as well. There's a whole thing you can look into if you're interested in that. And then at the end of the movie, here's the cabin in the woods. Then the giant hand shoots out from the center, like I was saying. So this represents the blue beam shooting up, but then also the Kraken hand coming down. And then it slams down on the screen. It's kind of hard to show in still frames because it happens really fast. And then they roll the credits of the movie. But that what you're seeing there is the same thing as what we saw in the Matrix. So we have the blue beam shooting up here from the X from the central point, and this is the camp of the saints versus the Kraken army, which is straight out of the Bible. And while that's happening, Neo is attaching himself to all these tentacle things at the MM so that he can go into the Matrix to battle Smith. And then Smith has taken over the whole world basically in like this giant Kraken hive mind, which is what the Kraken is setting up in our world. We have basically like a hive mind all around us of people who can be, triggered like invasion of the body snatchers just at any second. And then the Christ versus Antichrist fight happens in the storm. And then Neo at the end of the fight allows Smith to basically, quote unquote, win because he couldn't beat Smith. So the way to beat, because the right pillar doesn't destroy the left pillar. That's just not how it would work. Because the left pillar is the destroyer, the right pillar is the preserver. So in order to beat Smith, he has to defeat him with his own light. So Smith thinks he wins by taking over Neo with the black goo and the tentacles and all that, but he doesn't realize that Neo is plugged into the source, into the MM Mount Meru. So because of that, he's so bright spiritually that his brightness, you know, uh, turns Smith's darkness into light. And then we see the eclipses happening through their sunglasses here. And then Smith's darkness, he just basically turns into light and explodes. And then when he explodes, he creates this X, like we saw in Zion. It's also kind of like the Star of Bethlehem shape. And then it's inside the circle. And then when they pan out or zoom out, you see the four continents at the North Pole. And these are like the four rivers. And then Neo sacrificed himself, for the camp of the saints, like Jesus does. And he's doing the Christ pose as he's being taken away. But to Neo, he sees the world this way. It's like he's leaving in like this golden lotus, vessel to return to the source. It's not like this, you know, to the normal person, it looks like this dark, depressing, machine tentacles and all that. But it's not that. It's like the light and the dark worlds existing, overlapping each other basically. And it also looks like the concentric circles of the apex dome here. All right, so moving on to this movie, The Abyss. I'll just check out the stream for a little bit. All right. Hey, Narmish, good to see you. I'm not sure what Hemisync is pushing. Hey, Jay, what's up, man? Yeah, brought to you by Mount Meru, exactly. uh, St. Peter Basilica in Vatican City. Coppola is a beautiful white. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that 7 seconds. I'll have to check that out. That's interesting. Hey, Drew, good to see you. Lucas, good to see you. Yep, the logos is Jesus. Yo. Yeah, many things can represent the same thing, and also the same thing can represent many things in these stories. So like Neo, of course, represents Jesus, but he also represents us. Like he's like the hero of the story, the fish out of water. We basically go through the story with him. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure there is something to the DeLorean with the wings, the wing doors. Yeah, the ship is called the Nebuchadnezzar. Yep. That's Morpheus's ship. Hey, Francois, good to see you from South Africa. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, Jay's truth in movies are so awesome. That's interesting, the connection between the tuba maybe, Derek. All these, instruments are definitely, like, everything in this world relates to the world script, so it's the more you notice, like, the more everything kinda just falls into the same storyline or set of symbols. Like, one of the things that's really interesting too, I'm not gonna get into it here, but, gramophones, if you notice them, because they're shaped like a cornucopia, and, cornucopias represent, memory because they're shaped like the hippocampus, and, of course, this relates to a lot of Mandela effects, like the Fruit of the Loom logo, and, the cornucopia is no longer in the first Thanksgiving, but when you see gramophones in, these movies and things, they're often in scenes where people need to remember something, like in the beginning of the first or the newest Twin Peaks series, the first thing you see, I think, is this gramophone, and then the giant is telling Cooper that he needs to remember things. So, like the first time I saw that, I had no idea there was any connection there. So now, watching it again, it's like watching some. Actually, I need to watch it again. I'm due for a rewatch on that. But yeah, it's amazing like what you see now, knowing these things. Yeah, Westworld's another big one for sure. Yeah, the Nephilim return. That's crazy. Hey, CJ, good to see you, man. Glad to have you. Yep, Derek, same story everywhere. Oops, the chat just jumped on me here. Okay, here we go. Yeah, like Dark City. Yep. Well, Dark City is huge. I've talked about that a bunch too. Um, I actually have some videos on Dark City. I tried posting one to YouTube, but they wouldn't let me. So my main Dark City video is on my BitChute, which I never really use, but that's where it is, unfortunately. But also, I have a video called something like the Saturday Night in the Dark City, something like that. If you want to check it out, I never heard of Saros game. Yeah, for sure. Dark City is one of the top, probably top 10 to watch. Yep, Lucas. Yeah, it's crazy. Oh, that's interesting if the protest in Belgrade looks like something I just showed. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the world script functions like that. Yep, the pineal gland. I actually like calling it the pineal organ, because it's basically an organ like an eye. It has the, rods and cones in it, and it actually sees lightness and darkness. So I think a lot of people, trivialize the pineal gland when it's actually extremely important. It's really like the throne in our temple for, either Christ or the Antichrist to sit on. And that's inside of our pineal organ. We also have the microscopic crystals, which are piezoelectric, and they're what that means is when they're put under pressure, they spark. So that's why we see these sparks and all these things when people are going through a spiritual evolution. That's why, like when Steve Rogers becomes Captain America, he's inside of a cocoon and he's under a lot of pressure, but he's able to withstand it. They're like, "Oh, do you want to let it? Do you want us to let you out of there?" And he's just like, "No, I can take it." And that's what we're going through now. And then when he becomes Captain America, all these sparks go off and all that. So like we're basically inside of the cocoon right now. And I've talked about that a lot too in previous streams. Um, yeah, I definitely recommend watching Twin Peaks. There was the original 2 seasons came out around 1990, and then, there was a newer season that came out, I think, in 2017. And, David Lynch is a huge or was a huge world scripter. Nice, Lex. Thanks. I appreciate that. Lex just subbed on the BitChute channel. I haven't even checked there in months. I also started, a TikTok channel too months ago, but I haven't even looked at it. I just posted one video, and I'm not really into the social medias and all that. It's not my thing, but I do appreciate the support. And I might post more to TikTok in the future, depending on how things go. Okay, Pushin saying, A hemisync is a gateway process in which you tune both hemispheres of your brain, okay, to work in conjunction with each other. That's really interesting. I haven't heard of that. Well, the pineal organ, I feel like I don't. Well, everyone has one, I think. Well, one of the things the pineal organ does is it sees light and darkness. So, it secretes melatonin to help you sleep, if it sees too much darkness. But also think of that on a spiritual level, like seeing light and darkness. You know, if you have too much darkness, then you're asleep spiritually, which is why we need to be as bright as we can and always seeking the truth no matter what. I was actually just talking to someone in the comments recently, um, just saying like, he was saying something like, "It's amazing how all this stuff is adding up to your theory of things." But then I was like, "Well, it's only my theory of things because that's where the truth led me." Like I don't have, I think people get, stopped along their way once you develop like a pride or something, or you're certain that you're right about something. You have to always just keep going with the wherever the truth leads. Like a lot of people, well, I don't want to get too off track, honestly, but there's like various issues, the fake history, all that, um, the shape of the Earth stuff, the Mandela effect, the fake news. Some people can see some of them, but not all of them, and I think it's another you know path to cross or a barrier to take down or just keep going with the truth, where the evidence holds. But it's also important not to get carried away too. Like I think some people um, think they know something, but they haven't actually acquired enough evidence to say that they know it. But it's a learning process for all of us. That's part of the whole thing is us getting sharper. Hey, Kimberly, good to see you. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the thumbs up, guys. Yeah, it's good to see you all. All right, so I'll be jumping back into The Abyss, which is made by James Cameron, who's of course a JC world scripter. Anything James Cameron has done, I would suggest checking out if you're interested in this type of thing. The Terminator movies are huge. The Alien movies are huge. The Avatar's huge. Titanic's huge. The Abyss is huge. He's a huge world scripter. Similar to Steven Spielberg, it's just Steven Spielberg's a little bit more prolific. But here's The Abyss. So one of the main characters in The Abyss is this actress, Mary Mastrantonio. So here's the MM, and here they are getting ready for the whole pressure situation going deep into the ocean, and they have the dartboard right behind them, so that's saying that they're at the North Pole, the concentric circle dartboard. Why would a dartboard be right there? And this guy, he's basically the villain of the movie, and his name is Coffee. So it's kind of like the black goo symbolism as well, and he goes insane while they're down in the abyss. So I'm bringing this up too because there's a scene where Ed Harris and Mary get trapped under this into this in this pod or whatever, and they have to one of them has to drown. So she volunteers to be the one that drowns and basically dies because Ed's the stronger swimmer and he can get both of them out of there and then they could resuscitate her. So he's bringing her out and she's basically dead, but then they revive her with CPR. So what you're seeing again, like Miracle Max and the Princess Bride, is the Mountain being involved with resurrection. And while they're resurrecting her, their heads are going back and forth over this light source because this is the eclipse symbolism as well. And also we have the needle symbolism. And now keep in mind, usually needles are bad, but the ultimate needle is the blue beam too. So like every symbol has a good and bad aspect to it. So not every time you see a needle in a movie, it's a bad thing. Like in Dark City, Kiefer Sutherland, who's like the Holy Spirit character, the yellow and blue, basically. He injects John, which is the right pillar name. He injects his third eye basically with a needle, but it's not a bad needle. There's like two different needles. There's the black goo needle that would cause him to become part of like the Kraken hive mind, but then he gives him the good needle, which restores his memories and gives him the information he needs to defeat the Kraken. So she gets resurrected. So that's the MM being resurrected. She's also in this Robin Hood Prince of Thieves playing Maid Marian. Now, I haven't seen this movie in a long time, but I did really like it a lot from the 90s. I saw it a bunch of times. So just real quick, I don't want to like stay on it too much, but I'm just saying it's not a coincidence they cast an MM actress to play the MM character. And then what happens with the MM character? I mean, I remember basically the sheriff of Nottingham, he wants to marry her, but then of course Robin Hood wants to as well. So you have like the Christ versus the Antichrist wanting to rule or to marry the MM Mountain, you know. So it's that whole, and then of course the sheriff gets stabbed through the center with the sword, which is what happens to the Antichrist Kraken with the blue beam. Also, I think towards the end, Robin Hood, he like falls and they think he's dead, but then he comes back. So that's like, you know, him being like the Phoenix, you know. So I would have to see the movie again though, but just to say, you know, all these things keep happening in all these stories. So to get to Mad Max, of course, we have the MM and the pyramid here, and you could see other things too, like the Double O portal, perhaps, and things like that. Here's another poster for the first Mad Max movie. And, I think this might be Mandela effect, and I'm not 100% sure, but I don't remember, like, these, like, 7s in front of the M's. I just remember it being like an M. So that could be something to look out for. So in the first, Mad Max movie, starts off with the halls of justice. You have the dome between the twin pillars. So they just say, you know, in our future, basically, one of the first things they show is the skull and bones. So this is the North Pole symbolism. They're on Anarchy Road here. So Max is basically chasing this, you know, villain, and the villain is part of this crew, which is basically like the Kraken, you know, army. And but they're not there yet. They only arrive because this guy dies. So he goes into this, you know, explosion, and when the explosion happens, it's like the Kraken hand again. You see, like with the fingers, and you'll often see like these like smoke fingers. This happens in iPet Goat too, if you remember when the UFOs drop the bombs on the dome, and then when the dome explodes, it shoots out these like smoke kraken fingers just like this. I was going to put a picture, but I forgot. So after Max, you know, kills that villain, he goes back to paradise basically. So you have the house in the middle of nowhere where he lives with his wife and son, and his wife's name is Jessie. So here's like the JC Jesse connection, like in Breaking Bad, the Jesus character, his name is Jesse. Also in Breaking Bad, when the plane explodes in the sky, it has the smoke hand kraken tentacles as well. It looks just like iPet Goat too. I've shown that in previous videos. So he's also standing right next to this seahorse, and this seahorse is also the same symbol as the cornucopia, because both seahorses and cornucopias look like the hippocampus in our brain. So whenever you see a seahorse in these world script movies, it represents memory. So it's like, you know, remember paradise basically. So she's upset because he has to do all this dangerous work. She doesn't want him to leave, and now this biker gang shows up. So this is basically the Kraken army invading the camp of the Saints, and they arrive at the central garage. He even points to it. So here you have the central imagery, and this is like the main villain. And they get a call about a commotion that these bikers are causing, and Max answers the radio Rakatansky, and I had forgot that. I didn't even realize this was his name. So think about how crazy that is. So you have this MM character representing the North Pole, Rupus Nigra, the Black Rock, and his name is Rock. You know, Tansky. You could even say like Sky, maybe, but at least the rock symbolism is in his name. And I just looked it up to be sure, but yeah, Max's name is Rakatansky. It's not a coincidence, and I'll show you another example of that too in the future if I can get to it. So they had an incident at We Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is, of course, there's a Jerusalem in the Middle East, but it's really a symbolic place of the North Pole central area. So the you know an incident at We Jerusalem is basically like saying an incident at the Camp of the Saints. Nomad bikers were on it. So they were just talking to this couple, and interestingly enough, too, like this woman is inside of a small dome here. But also we have like the spiral staircase. I just took a quick shot of that because the spiral staircase is in so many things. But this is at the police station. So the villain is looking for Max and his wife, and he's saying he's asking this guy, he's like, "Oh, there's just a couple passing through," and they said they were heading north. So again with this north symbolism, and the villains end up unfortunately killing his wife and kids. So Max kind of goes on a revenge spree to kill them. And this was interesting because I took notes of this movie because I'm pretty into the Mad Max movies, and I wanted to talk about them at some point. I've talked about the newest one, Furiosa, quite a bit because it's pretty intense, but I haven't really talked about these older ones much. So I took a note that this villain gets crushed by this truck, and in my notes, I said that the truck has an X and a circle on it, but it doesn't. It has this MT on the front and then a big MT on the back. So I think it literally changed. Like it's a Mandela effect because for starters, I wouldn't not recognize like an MT symbol because this is also a symbol of the world script, and I wouldn't just call this an X in a circle. So it's kind of a weird one, but I mean, I feel like it changed. I don't see why. I have that memory and that note of this being an X in a circle here. But MT is interesting too. Like for starters, it equals 33 because T is 20 and M is 13. But also, you have, well, if you guys are familiar with Jurassic Liars channel, he talks about like Elvis a lot, of course. And like Elvis is a big Antichrist symbol on the world stage. And he was known for being in Memphis, Tennessee, but he was also born in Tupelo, Mississippi. So you have that MT connection there. But there's a lot of things too, like Stone Temple Pilots. They have a song like "The Big Empty," and if you think about their name, the Stone Temple Pilots. And oh, and the game Fallout, there's a whole section called "The Big Empty," but it's like MT. So I don't want to get too off into it, but I'm just saying, I wouldn't like not recognize, this big MT on the truck. I would have wrote that down. So instead, I wrote down that it had a big X in a circle. So I feel like it changed. So it's just an interesting thing to pay attention to. But then also at the end of the movie, when Max drives off, he goes into this prohibited area with the skull and crossbones and the dead world tree. So he goes from living in paradise to living in the Antichrist world where now the world tree is dead. So in the Road Warrior, here we have this pyramidal design going towards what looks like Emerald City. This is of course like the North Pole. A lot of symbolism, the twin pillars and all that. This is interesting too because it's brought to you by Warner Brothers, which is one of the biggest companies like Columbia. And Columbia, that represents basically the blue beam, which I've talked about a lot. This is something that Jay Dreamers talks about too. And Warner Brothers represents like the shield. So, when we look up into the sky, it's not like we can see the dome or we can see like the apex dome or anything. And what do they do with this Warner Brothers logo? They just show the sky and then it appears, like it was invisible. So I find that very interesting. It also has the yellow and blue coloring too. But I think what they're saying is, this apex dome area is something that we can't see right now. For whatever reason, it's invisible. So when the movie starts, we have Max. This would be like the merging of worlds symbolism I've talked about, where when you see characters using binoculars, it's like an excuse to get the Vesica Pisces into the shots. So this would be Max, who's like this lone, wanderer character, but now he's going to merge worlds with essentially the camp of the saints to try to help them against these, this Kraken army that's, encircling the camp of the saints. So this is Lord Humongous, if you guys are familiar with this movie. So Lord Humongous, he represents like the skull and bones. Like, so this is his gun. And when he opens it, he's got the skull and bones insignia right here to represent like the dead Antichrist North Pole area. And that's also why, the Bushes and those people are with the skull. That's why they have the skull and bones. It's representative of that North Pole area. Also, Bush Senior was the head of the CIA, and that's like the central intelligence agency. So again, with this central thing, because they're all reporting to this Antichrist mountain, to the Black Rock. So Lord Humongous shooting the glass. This is something you'll often see with the broken glass. Let's see. Okay, so these are two guys who are at the camp of the saints. They're trying to convince Max to stay with them and to go to basically paradise. So they say they could rebuild our lives. He needs a ticket to paradise. That's a like the famous song by Eddie Money, I think it is, the Two Tickets to Paradise. Like, it sounds kind of silly, but I think it's actually a big deal, frankly. And then this guy shows him this. these postcards of like this beach, and he's saying, "You have to come. This is where we're going, paradise." But then Max refuses the deal, and he gets into a car crash. The villains knock him off the road, and car crashes is something that you'll see often in these movies too. It basically represents someone going off the path to God, basically, or to paradise. But I don't want to get too into that right now. So here you see like the Camp of the Saints area. They have the pyramid in the center, and also what could be like the blue beam or the spear. So the villains are invading the Camp of the Saints. They're going towards this pyramid. Here you see like the spike breaking the glass. I didn't want to. There's a lot to go over. I have a lot of stuff, so I just took some random screenshots. But so this is like the main vehicle of the heroes. They basically have these like spike eclipses at the top of the vehicle, and then at the end of the movie, Max, who sacrifices himself and saves the day for the heroes. He's got the right eye open, and his left eye was blinded. And this kid he befriends, uh, he's like the narrator of the story. So he says at the end of the story, when they're taking their caravan away, they say, "So began the journey north to safety. Among us, we found a new leader, the man who came from the sky, the gyro captain. We traveled far beyond the reach of men on machines. The juice, the precious juice, was hidden in the vehicles." Now, this represents oil or gas, but you could also, I think of it as like the oil in their lamps. And he says, "As for me, I grew to manhood. In the fullness of time, I became the leader, the chief of the great northern tribe." So very interesting. So now in the third Mad Max movie, Beyond Thunderdome, we of course have the spear symbolism and the dome with the spear going through it, and the kraken hair symbolism from Tina Turner's character. And Tina Turner is like the TT again. So this is like the Antichrist symbolism. So Max is like the Christ character, and she's like the Antichrist character. And then these kids that he meets are in paradise at the Camp of the Saints again. So it's like a different story, but it's the same thing. So in this one, the Thunderdome, which is like our dome, which is likely what causes the sound of thunder reverberating off the dome. Um, you have the dome with the X and the circle at the top. And Tina Turner, she rules this world from this pyramidal area. And then inside of the dome, you have this guy with the Freemason insignia on his hanging around his neck, and the whole thing is two men enter, one man leaves. So I think this is also about our twin spirits. So we all have twin spirits, and then by the end of this, end of the world scenario, we're going to be one spirit, or we're like two people, and then we become one person. And here you could see his he's got the staff, but he's also got the Freemason G in the what is it? The compass and the square. And I think this also this symbol represents the North Pole as well. A lot of maps have that G in the center, and then um, the world is said to be made, with a compass and a square. So that would be at the center area. And here we looking up, you have the X in the circle with the two lights. This would be like the sun and the moon. Like the sun is like the brighter light, and the moon is like the lesser light. So Max faces this guy in the dome, but he doesn't want to kill him, so he gets sent away on like this black horse with this weird mask. And on the mask, his left eye is blacked out again too, which is really weird. And he gets like left for dead in the desert, but he gets found by this girl who's lives in this paradise. So they bring him to this paradise area, and they think that he's their savior, this Captain Walker. So um, so Max asks, who are all you people? So they say the waiting ones. And he's like, waiting for what? And they're like, waiting for you, because they think he's basically Jesus. And he goes, well, who am I? And they're like, I think he's, testing us. And this is like what we're in, this period of testing. So they relate to Max this story that they were told to all remember and to keep repeating. Like what we're doing now is we're remembering, the truth of the world, and we're sharing this story with each other. And this is basically what these characters are doing here. So the main girl, she says, "This ain't one body's story; it's the story of us all." because what we hear today, you have to tell, the next generation, and the end is the beginning, basically. So it's all about this, cataclysmic reset. And what's interesting too is she tells the story while holding this frame, which is like the same dimensions as like the movie screen or a television screen or a modern day television screen. So she says it's pox eclipse, full of pain. So what she's talking about is the apocalypse. But what's interesting is they're combining the words pox and eclipse. So here you have like the CV stuff, the pan event, and the eclipse. And we've seen, tons of eclipses lately. The eclipse is also symbolic of the world's merging at the North Pole. And of course, it's all symbolic of the apocalypse, which actually means the unveiling. So it's the unveiling of the truth. It's also the unveiling of our mental or spiritual barriers. And it's also the unveiling of the dome over the earth, which of course hasn't happened yet. But they're also showing the atom bomb here. So the atom bomb is also symbolic of us returning to paradise and becoming like Adam and Eve again, which is why Marty McFly is the atomic kid at the end of Back to the Future. And the atom bomb comes up in a ton of stuff. I'll talk about that in a future video. So she says, Mr. Dead is chasing everybody, but one person he couldn't catch was Captain Walker. And Walker gathers up a gang to take to the air and fly to the sky. So this is like Jesus gathering his people to ascend or to be raptured. And here they have the plane. It also looks like a cross. And they give him this device. I forget what it's called, but it's one of those things where you put the slides in it and you can see. So this is like it's basically like us looking at these movies and TV shows and books and things um, to get an idea of what the story of the world is. And they does the pictures so they'd remember all the knowing that they lost. Yep. So Max looks at these pictures and they're like, "Remember this?" And it's a city, and they say it's Tomorrow Morrow Land, and they say, "Remember this?" And it's a long exposure of a street, but they say it's the River of Light, and then they say, "Remember this?" And it's the plane flying over the dome, the Sky Raft, and then remember this, and it's Captain Walker with the pyramidal plane. And then they have this, mural painting of Captain Walker, and he's doing the Christ pose, and he's got all the people on his shoulders. So they say, "We're ready. Take us home." Um, and then, Max says, "Well, the pox eclipse already happened. There isn't; those things don't exist anymore. You should understand that this is home." So, like, they're in paradise. This is the same thing as home is a symbolic word for paradise, for the Garden of Eden. So there's no Tomorrowland. Um, so then this is like the blue beam coming through the cave, and he ends up sacrificing himself so that the kids can take off in this plane. So he, even though he says it's not real, he ends up living out the world script actions that they thought he would. So he ends up being like the Jesus figure, sacrificing himself so that they could all be saved and ascend out of that area. And then at the end of the movie, they're at this place with the big X, and one of us that got the looks and started leads us here, and then they remember Jesus and pass the story along, for the next reset. So I'll be getting into these 28 Days Later movies here. Just check the chat for a bit. All right. Yep. Follow the truth wherever it leads. That's for sure. Um, well, I mean, like to answer Lucas is saying, like, he doesn't feel connected, like he's not hearing or seeing anything. Um, I mean, I don't hear God's voice either. I don't think anyone does. God doesn't really um, do that, at least not at this time. Um, it's more like having a connection with the Holy Spirit and like getting these like epiphanies and like some people, including myself, call them like downloads. So like all of a sudden you'll just like know a bunch of things or make a bunch of connections, and it'll lead you in a certain direction. And that happens to me consistently. Like the more you pay attention and the more you follow along with that, the more it happens. So I feel like it's like that. I wouldn't expect to see some people do get, like, visions and things like that, but, I haven't really I've had, like, very vivid dreams and things like that, but, it's not like I wouldn't expect to, like, see Jesus or hear a voice or something like that. That's not what I mean. Um, and also we're in, like, this, like, weird, like, testing phase where, we have to have, faith. That's why, like, faith is such a big thing. So, you know, faith wouldn't be necessary if we just had all the answers. Like, if God just, like, sat us down and told us everything, then it wouldn't really be much of a test. So we have to be, like, in a state of not knowing things for certain. Yeah, it's important to have, clean water, that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I've, definitely done a lot of research into health stuff. It's amazing how pretty much everything around us is just poison. Yeah, like the Challenger explosion pushing totally. Yeah, so many movies, they talk about going north for safety. The movie, Greenland is all about getting to the north during the, Armageddon event, basically, or right before the Armageddon event. That's funny about the CIA. Yeah, I hope so, Derek. That's cool. I know someone who had, like, a really incredible vision once, and I believe this person because 'cause I've known them a long time. But, yeah, I've never had, like, a waking vision. Alright, so getting back to these 28 Days Later movies, I don't really recommend these, you definitely only if you're okay with, like, extreme, R-rated stuff, but, they're not, like, my favorite things or anything, but they have a lot of interesting world script stuff going on. So, also the biohazard symbol is interesting too because, it's got it's like kinda like, the Vesica Pisces, symbols, like the worlds merging from the side, but also the worlds merging from, above and below. So it's like the twin pillars merging, but also like heaven and earth merging, and then of course like it's like devil horn type of thing, or crescent moon, all that. So the main thing in this movie is the rage virus. So this is what causes the zombie outbreak, and you can check this out. And rage is also a big keyword of the world script. So whenever you see someone mention rage or it comes up somewhere, it comes up like more than you would think. Just one second, let me get a drink. All right. But yeah, this word rage comes up a lot if you're paying attention for it. And one of the things that has come up a lot in these stories too is the empty cities. And I don't think people really give this enough attention, frankly. So the main character, I think his name's Jim, he wakes up in this totally empty London city. And this happened on the world stage, like you might think like, well, there's all this like blue beam symbolism, but the blue beam, hasn't shot up yet or something like that. But it's like, these things are happening. And one of the things that's a big symbol in these world script media pieces are these empty cities. And this is this happened in 2020. Like you probably never would have thought that London or New York City or Las Vegas or any of these big cities would be like completely empty, but they were. So there you have, just one element of the world script that's in so many of these stories actually happening because they're all going to happen if they haven't happened yet. So another thing that we see too is this red hand on the wall here. It happens in the mist. Here, just real quick, this guy's got like the red hand on the wall. He gets and he gets pulled away by the Kraken entity in the mist outside of the dome. It's not the dome, but outside of the glass. And then under the dome, which is also a Stephen King story, you have the red handprint on the dome itself here from one of the main characters. Um, so here you have that, and I think his name is Barbie, weirdly enough. But the name Barbie is interesting too because it means foreigner, so that comes up a lot too. But I want to get to that. So here we have like the empty highway and the spiral stairs. So just picking out a couple things to show you that it's not just like a one-off, world script, element. It's all these different elements to show that it's a piece of world script media. So here you have like the fishbowl with the low water, and these are like the four main characters of the story, and they see the four horses of the apocalypse, and they're also right next to this giant world tree. So whenever you see like a tree that's kind of just in the middle of nowhere, and it's also usually like uh, symmetrical design to it, that represents them being at a North Pole location and the world tree. Here they're driving along the water here, so you have the water mirror or the black mirror, and they're driving into these ruins. And this is also something that the North Pole is often shown as is a place of ruins, because when Jesus is here, everything is, you know, wonderful and new and eternal and looks nice and all that. But when it's the Antichrist rule, we basically like live in like the destruction of the previous world. So this main character, he's like the father of the girl. He's walking around and he's trying to get them into this like military camp that's been playing over the radio. And note how these barbed wires are like Vesca Pisces. And he keeps walking back and forth across these Vesca Pisces because worlds are about to merge. And he gets frustrated and he hits this pole and he doesn't realize that there's like a dead zombie up at the top of the pole. And here's the X also for the North Pole. And a drop of blood falls. Here's the drop of blood, and it goes into his left eye. And this turns him into a zombie, unfortunately, because he was starting to feel, rage also. And the military comes out of nowhere and kills him, unfortunately. So now it's just Jim and the two girls, and they get brought to this military camp. So here's them being taken with the soldiers. And this would be another North Pole location, the big house in the middle of nowhere. And they have a spiral staircase there as well. And there's all kinds of symbolism too that you could see in architecture, like this being like the O portal and the four continents at the North Pole and all that. There's a lot in architecture. And then there's a storm. So the storm is another big symbol of the world script, of course. And they start having a fight to the death at the Black Pool. And also you have a sign here for the North. And you could look into the other stuff too. I mean, like the numbers that come up in these movies too are important, like 42. I don't want to get too off track though. So this is one of the last military guys that they have to face, and he's going to make the eclipse here. And then Jim basically sacrifices himself to save the girls, and they're trying to bring him back to life. So he's like, the Christ character being resurrected. So this is something that we see often too. And while he's in like a coma state, he has like this vision of this like inverted upside down hell world, and it says hell right here. So he wakes up and he's at the North Pole mountain, and they put the O portal at the end of the hell to make hello, and then the plane comes and saves them, and then they basically are in paradise. And then in 28 weeks later, they say mainland Britain is quarantined. So you have this, quarantine stuff. And 28 days later, Britain is destroyed by the rage virus. And right after that, they show this needle looking building. And these are a couple of the main characters. You can notice the pyramid here, and she's looking at his eyes, and one eye's green and one eye's brown. So this is like the when you see like heterochromia, this is another symbol to look out for. I don't want to get too into it, but she makes note of how it's interesting. And this is also something with like David Bowie, when people have two different eyes. Now they could even be the same color eyes, but their eyes just look different. This is like a big Antichrist symbol. I don't want to get too into it, but this is why David Bowie is like the man who sold the world. He's also the man who fell from, or the man who fell to Earth, I think it's called. And he's a big world stager, obviously. And then Jeff Bezos has like these two different eyes. He looks strange. And Demolition Man's another movie that I've seen a lot in the past. And this poster is Mandela affected for sure. The A's were not these lambda mountain shapes, and the E's were not like these three bars either. And I remember I basically seen this poster change twice because I remember back in the '90s when I had this VHS tape. I remember thinking it was weird that the E's looked like this, and then just like a few years previous, or previous to today, I noticed the A change also. So it's like the Terminator 2 poster. Like I've watched that change like two or three times. And the main villain in this movie is Wesley Snipes, who's playing Simon Phoenix, but he's like the Dark Phoenix, and he's got the Antichrist, heterochromia, blue and brown eyes, and also like you got the yellow and blue and stuff like that. But just to show you that this is a thing that you can look out for. It's not like a huge symbol of the world script, but it is a symbol. So going back to 28 weeks later, it's no coincidence they have the eye here, but also the pyramid with the blue and yellow primarily colors. And the two main kids in the story, they defy the orders of the people who are running, England at this time, and they go back to their home to try to get some of their stuff. So they're just packing up some of their stuff. They shouldn't be there. And this kid opens up his closet, and inside of his closet, he's got this big Jaws poster. And they don't like show it from far away, but you could tell that this is a Jaws poster. And this is also symbolic. I've talked about this a lot too. I don't want to get too into it, but like the shark is like the shark on the iPet goat chalkboard. It symbolizes the CV and all that goes along with that. That's why it's in Back to the Future, Jaws 19, and there's a ton of connections there. You can check out if in my previous videos if you're interested. He also opens up um, this shoebox with like this kraken octopus thing on it. And what they're doing by going home at the wrong time is they're actually releasing the kraken back into the world. So um, that's like the triggering event that brings the zombies back. So it's a negative thing, which is why you're seeing the shark and then the kraken image. So then they have like the small dome. The small dome explodes, and now they're crossing the bridge to the Capitol dome, making the M handhold. They're in this outdoor, like carnival type area. You have like the concentric circles, the white Waltham, the WW. These are all symbols I've talked about. You have the light at the end of the tunnel, which we see in the movie Arrival, where they have the giant black rock mountain on the green land with the mist. This is like the alien spaceship with the Kraken at the top. They go from the portal from light to dark, and then they're shot up here like a giant needle. But these are both inversions. Like on The Economist, they have the Kraken needle as the light at the end of the tunnel, and here they have the Kraken aliens as the light at the end of the tunnel. So these are like inversions. So here's like Louise and Ian, which is John, the left and right pillars meeting the Kraken at the top there. So I don't want to get too off track on that, but I'm just saying that the light at the end of the tunnel is something that comes up, and it can be used for either a good thing or a bad thing. In this movie, it was a good thing because now they're being led to paradise, essentially under the dome here. And when they get to this stadium at the Green Land, they're going to be raptured basically out of here by this helicopter. And this guy, what's his face? Harold Perrineau again is the helicopter pilot. We saw him in The Matrix. He's also in Lost and From. So he's going to rescue these kids, and there's no one else who's alive. And helicopters are often seen as the blue beam because they ascend straight up, and they also they hover, but they also have a searchlight. Usually, that's like a blue beam. So he takes the kids up through the blue with the blue beam through the dome, out of the world. And I just wanted to talk about those movies because those are the precursor movies to these 28 years later's movies, which I wanted to get to. And one thing I've noticed too that's interesting is like with the Mad Max movies and with these 28 days and years movies, each movie has like more and more world scripting in them. So like by the time you get to the fifth Mad Max movie, Furiosa, It's like, they literally just have, like, this guy flying around with, like, these devil horns on this giant kraken, contraption, like this hang glider thing, and, just, like, so much over the top world script symbolism, and the same thing with these, 28 years later movies, just, like, just so much symbolism, that I'll be showing you guys here, and you can obviously see the Skull Mountain, which is symbolic of the North Pole. This character's name is Spike. So you have like the spike or the CV rising to the top of the mountain. Here's the biohazard symbol with the pyramidal design at the bottom. So in the beginning of the first movie, you have this kid running to this church, so again, with this North Pole symbolism, the church in the middle of nowhere. And his father is the priest, but his father has gone crazy and he's actually welcoming the zombies. And he's got the inverted cross here because he's turned to the Antichrist. So this kid's like trying to plead with him to help the family who's being killed by zombies, but the father's like, "No, this is a good thing. They're going to save us." So he's completely flipped, inverted. And this is basically like most of the people around us who thought that the V was good. That's why the Economist showed the V as the savior, as the light at the end of the tunnel, because people literally think that the Antichrist is the savior. That's how inverted people are in this world, and that's what this guy represents. And he in turn turns this kid into a villain because this kid becomes the Jimmy Crystal character who's like the main villain of these two movies. So they show this, North Pole island in the middle of nowhere with the mist surrounding it. It kind of looks like Africa too a little bit, but it's just like, when you see like the lone island with the mist, then they show this flag of England. It's known as St. George's Cross. So here we have this red and white cross, but that's like the X for the North Pole area. Then they show this castle mountain. So here again with the lone mountain and the castle. And then they show the world tree. So it's like all these symbols right in a row at the beginning of the movie, basically telling you, if you're in the know, that this is a movie about the North Pole and about the world script. And then they showed the camp of the saints under the small dome, and the dome has layers to it as well. And the people under the dome are saying, "Welcome home, Spike," because the kid went out with his father on like a hunting expedition or something to the mainland where there's zombies and it's dangerous. And they have this painting or this mural on the wall, and it says, "Fail we may, but go we must. God send grace." And it's showing this North Pole mountain with the cross on top, and this is like the Northern Lights, basically, or the beams. And at the bottom, it says, "Protect our island home, the Holy Island Mission," and it was established in 2002. So interestingly enough, 2002 is when the first 28 Days Later movie came out, but it's also the year right after the September event, which is when I think the end of the world started, so the Holy Island Mission started right after the end of the world started. So here at this watchtower, we see the eclipse happen. So whenever you see like a point light source or the sun being blocked by something and then reappearing, that's eclipse symbolism. And it means that worlds are merging because what's happening here is Spike and his father are coming home, but they also have like zombies trailing them, so it's like the merging of the human and the zombie world. And Spike, he he's having this dream about his mother who's sick. She has like brain cancer and she's drowning. And note that he has like the red sky behind him. This is also another big symbol of the plasma apocalypse because the sky is going to turn red. That's why you'll often see like this red to blue, shift, or blue to red shift. So Spike comes back and then he takes his mother because they saw this person who everyone thinks is like a crazy man, but he's actually a doctor. So Spike's like, "We're going to go see this doctor." And he basically, takes his mother without people, approving of them leaving the Camp of the Saints area. So she's like, "What, a doctor?" He's like, "A real doctor from the old days." And one thing that you'll see too in these world script pieces of media is doctors usually represent God. Um, and I don't want to get too into that, but I'll just leave it at that for now. So when they're on their way to see this doctor, they have to cross through this split mountain area with the tree right in the middle. So again, North Pole symbolism. And they walk right by this church where it used to say, "Behold, he is coming with the clouds," but they say, "Behold, Jimmy is coming with the clouds." So who is this like Jimmy? and they find this temple to stay at. And here you have the Black Mirror with the Vesica Pisces shapes happening from the rain. This is also the storm symbolism. And they cross this bridge and this land bridge, and this even looks like the blue beam shape. This land bridge here, and they're being chased by zombies, and they run by this 5G tower. So here's the communications tower. And they also run by this Shell gas station, which is now saying, hell, because they're in like the hell world after the Armageddon event, because this world is basically going to turn into hell. And they meet the doctor, who's Ralph Fiennes, and he looks like this because he covers himself in iodine, which is apparently like a prophylactic type of thing. So then Spike looks at what this guy has, and this is the reason why I've brought these movies up in the first place. And it's all these like bones that this guy has made this structure out of, and he calls it memento mori. So here's your MM. So it's just like the MMs that we've seen in all these previous movies, the machine mainframe in the Matrix, the medical mechanica in Fooly Cooley, and tons of things. So he says it's memento mori. So he says it means remember death in Latin. So he takes them to this memento mori place to the center of it, and they're doing the M handholds going to this central North Pole area. And when they get there, it's this at the center, there's this giant skull mountain. And what's interesting too about this is it's whether or not it's the actual explanation, it is an explanation for like the catacombs that a lot of people talk about, where there's just like human skulls and bones and stuff all over the place. It's like, what happened, so in this movie, the explanation is that this doctor has been living on his own in this wasteland world after this horrible zombie rage virus thing happened, and there's just dead bodies all over the place. So he just took it upon himself to build this monument to them, like a above ground catacombs type thing. And he says it's a temple. And then when Spike eventually leaves, he crosses by the tree and the bridge, and he meets this Jimmy Crystal character. Now, JC is, of course, the Jesus initials, but this guy is the total inverse, and he's definitely the Antichrist. He's one of the most evil characters I've ever seen in anything. And he finds Spike at the end of this first movie, and notice how he has the upside down cross, even though he does have the yellow and blue coloring. He's the imposter. So the Antichrist often parades around as the imposter, which is why you'll often see like a lot of like shapeshifter type things, or like body snatcher type things, because that's all that imposter symbolism. Um, so he also has this like spear, like the blue beam. Although he goes down, he doesn't go up. And when he goes down to meet Spike, um, they show this upside down cross, but really interestingly, they zoom in on it, and it shows the pyramid at the North Pole. This would be the ground, and then the blue beam charging up underneath this pyramid, and then shooting up through the pyramid. So very interesting that the upside down cross, also has this symbol that could be, attached to it. But he is like, the imposter blue beam. And he takes Spike under his wing and basically gives Spike no, a chance to do anything else, or else he would kill him. So I'll get into this next movie next. Just checking out the chat. Yeah, I hope they don't have a new needle for the Hanta thing. That's funny though. They'll never. I mean, in my opinion, they'll never force us to take a needle. You might like lose your job, you might lose family members, you might lose whatever, but it's always going to be a choice. Hey, Flat Earth Andy, good to see you. Just checking out the chat. I'm just going to get a sip of water. Yeah, the sodium vapor golden age for sure. Check out, Jay Dreamer's channel for more information on that. Yeah, I saw that, Lex, how they have, like, zombie preparedness in, like, official things. They have it in, like, the, Amazon, like, terms of service or whatever. Yeah, Jay's, Truth in Movies on the Mist is amazing. Yeah, and Jesus was also, crucified at Golgotha, which is the place of the skull. And, of course, there is, like, a real, place of the excuse me, place of the skull, Golgotha in the Middle East, but it's representative of this North Pole area ultimately. All right. So this is the newest 28 years later movie. It's called The Bone Temple. And so this Jimmy character, he has like a group of people. It's like a gang, and they go around, murdering and doing just horrible, horrible things. I don't like I said, I don't recommend this movie unless you're okay with like extreme R-rated stuff. Um, so they're basically doing like a home invasion, which is like something you'll often see. It's like in Clockwork Orange and things like that, where um, the home ultimately is it's symbolic of our head or our temple, and then you have this antichrist force that wants to invade into our temple, which is what the V ultimately is. I think they even said the V was rare, if not the first V that broke the blood brain barrier. So that's like literally invading into the camp of the saints inside of our heads, um, or into our temple. So that's ultimately like what this is all about. But then so this is why you'll often see a lot of like home invasion stuff in these movies. So they're invading these people's home, and they're like, "Oh, we haven't just been introduced." So they all introduce themselves as Jimmy. Like once you join Jimmy's gang, everyone is called Jimmy, and they think it's like this big joke. They're all just saying Jimmy, and then when it gets to the actual Jimmy, he calls himself Roberto Calamari. Now, this might just sound like a silly name and everyone laughs, and I'm sure like a normal audience member would just think it's a funny name that he came up with, but it's not. It's like it's heavily symbolic and it's actually really incredible to think about that they go to this level of detail with this symbolism. So Roberto, for starters, is the name Bob is short for Robert. So this, no offense if your name is Robert, I'm obviously not talking about you personally, but the name Robert or Bob is often used as a nickname for a devil character. Like in Twin Peaks, the devil character is named Bob. And it comes up a lot too. People have talked about that online in a few different channels I've seen, but also calamari. This is the kraken, the octopus. So he's basically saying his name is Devil Kraken. And then when people laugh, he's like, "All right, it's a joke. I'm Jimmy too. We're all Jimmy." So what he means by this too is that they're a hive mind. They're all the same person. So what you're basically seeing is the Kraken army of the dead invading, the camp of the saints as usual. So she says, "Are you going to leave?" He's like, "Oh, we'll leave, but we're gonna kill you first." I'm not gonna show you guys a lot of the things in this movie because it's too graphic and horrible. Um, one of the women, she runs away and she was pregnant. So they're saying, should we chase her down? And he says it would frustrate old Nick to lose both her and the baby. So he answers to his father, who is old Nick. So again, no offense if your name is Nick. I'm not talking about you personally, but Nick is also often a nickname for the devil. Like in the movie The Room, not the funny Room movie, but the one that's not funny, where the girl is trapped with her kid in this guy's room, and they call this guy who's imprisoning her Old Nick, and it's symbolic of us basically being imprisoned in this world, but having Old Nick torture us all the time. So anyway, going back to this this Bone Temple area, the doctor in this movie, he's trying to basically resurrect a zombie who he's made friends with, and he basically shoots the zombie with like sedative type drugs so he doesn't go crazy, and he's trying to like bring him back to humanity, and he's just having fun like singing a song to him, and it's this Duran Duran song, but one of the lines that they show him sing is "You're a bird of paradise." So here we have paradise again. This is the about the Garden of Eden and the bird. And the word bird equals 33. It's also symbolic of an animal that can fly. So it's all about us taking flight and going to paradise. And if this zombie is able to resurrect himself on a spiritual level and become a human again, he would be like this bird going to paradise. So Jimmy and the Jimmies, they capture those people, and I don't want to get too into what they do, but he's giving them this speech, and he's saying the world of men became old Nick's dominion, and his dominion was hell. Then old Nick did speak to his favored son, whose name was Jimmy Crystal, which is him. That's the JC, and also the Crystal. You are now Sir Lord Jimmy Crystal. You shall be my right hand, which shall be strong. And you shall have 7 fingers, and each finger shall be a claw, and your 7 fingers shall hold your crown. So this is straight out of the book of Revelation, which used to be Revelations. And he's very serious about all this, biblical symbolism. And it's another thing too to think about, like, why is there so much biblical symbolism in all these movies? It's because it's the world script. It's just the way it is. So the zombie doesn't seem to be responding too well, or becoming human again. So basically, the Ralph finds this doctor character. He's saying that he's running out of the sedative medicine. So he's like, I'm going to be out of this medicine soon, so I can offer you peace. I could basically uh, end your life and give you a place in the ossuary, in a way, a home. So again, with this home symbolism at the North Pole, a different kind of peace. So here he's showing him the needle, but this would be like a needle of death. So he's about to give him this death needle, and he says, if there was just some way you could give consent, but obviously the zombie can't talk, and he says, just the barest assent. So this is an interesting word because it's a homonym. So the word assent means to agree or concur, but assent spelled this way is to go up, to rise. So just like the barest assent, and he won't give him the needle of death. So think about this in terms of the needle and all the 2020 stuff. Anyone who has like the slightest bit of spiritual awakeness shouldn't have gotten the needle. So he's looking up at the full moon, and he's saying sleep well. He calls him Samson, which is also interesting. But then he's about to give him the needle, and the zombie says moon. So he's like, what, oh my god, did you just talk? So then this zombie, he starts getting his memories back of real life. So he's like walking through this forest, and he's kind of tripping out over it, and he's having memories of like trains and different things from his past. So this is like us. We were spiritually asleep or spiritually dead before Jesus saved us, and now that we're saved and learning the truth, and trying to spread the truth, and follow the truth, we're being given or gifted, or finding these memories of the past world, the way things used to be. So Ralph finds is looking for him. He's calling for Samson, and then he says, were you lost and now are found? This is all a big symbolism of being spiritually dead and then spiritually alive. So then this Jimmy Crystal guy, this Antichrist, he stumbles upon this bone temple, and he thinks that this doctor is actually old Nick, because he looks like he's covered in like red, and he's talking to zombies and all this stuff. He thinks he's the devil, so he's going to meet him. And as he's going to meet him, his head is going back and forth with this light behind him, and making the eclipse, because their worlds are about to merge. And he gets to this bone temple, the Skull Mountain, and they meet. This is actually a really interesting meeting. This is probably my favorite scene of the movie. And he says, are you old Nick? So he's like, old Nick. So he's like, you're not old Nick. So Ralph says, I don't know any old Nick. So he says, everybody knows old Nick, because he's talking about the devil. So he says, I'm called Ian, and the name Ian is like the name John. Like I showed you in Arrival, you have Louise and Ian, which is the left pillar and the right pillar, because Ian is John, and John is like the primary name for the right pillar, and like Lu would be like the primary name for the left pillar. And it's like Jesus and Lucifer also. Just one second. So you basically also have like the J and the L pillars. If you look at like a trident, the right pillar is like a J and the left pillar is like an L. So Jimmy's like wondering if this guy's being like, is he's trying to trick him. He's like, old Nick's known for being a little tricksy, playing games. So he says, when you say old Nick, do you mean Satan? And he's like, of course I do. So he's like, oh, right, of course, my skin color and the bones. So he says, I'm not Satan. I'm Dr. Ian Kelson. This is a memorial to the dead, like a graveyard. So he's like, oh, you're an atheist doctor. So you believe all this, zombie stuff was caused by science and bugs and whatnot. So he's like, and what's the other alternative? And he's like, old Nick unleashing his wrath upon the world of man. So he goes, okay, so I'm an atheist and you're a Satanist. So he's like, well, there it is, mystery solved. And also interesting too that like, you have these two representatives of like atheism and Satanism, and they're like kind of, left over in this, hell world basically. Um, so Jimmy told his followers that this guy was old Nick and that, they were going to meet him and all that. So he's like, I have this, problem now where you need to help me or I'm basically going to kill you. Um, so I don't want to get into too graphicness, but he says basically he's going to make it so that he can't breathe. So this again is like the Antichrist causing people to not breathe. This is a very common thing that you'll see in all these stories. Like the what's his name, Matthew McConaughey in the Dark Tower. Whenever someone gets in his way, he just says stop breathing because he's like the Antichrist character who causes people not to breathe. And this, of course, is what we saw during the Pan event, like with the people having difficulty breathing and being put on the ventilators and all that stuff. So you think there's an arrangement to be made here where you can like pretend to be old Nick? So he says, well, the devil's always up for making a deal. Now think about like that, where like Trump's biggest thing is like the art of the deal, and he's like the Antichrist character on the world stage, or like the devil, they're always showing him with like devil horns and all that. And that's why his big book is the art of the deal. Like it's not about, money or economics. It's about all this spiritualism. So Jimmy and his group come later and note that they're wearing masks. And Ralph Fiennes, he's like set up this whole, basically like a heavy metal concert for them. And like if you think about it from their eyes, uh they've grown up in this world. They've never been to a concert, so like for him to just like to imagine like this would be a very crazy thing. They would believe that he was old Nick if he were to do the things he's about to do. So he has this record player and he plays Iron Maiden, which is a band I never really got into, but I guess they have this song which is all about the 666. So he literally plays this song, for the devil sends the beast with wrath because he knows the time is short. So this is like the short season. And let him who hath understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number, and its number is 666. And of course, Jimmy's loving all this. So he lights up this fire. It makes like the ring of fire. This is also the eclipse symbolism, or the corona around the North Pole, Skull Mountain. And like one of the lyrics is like, "Was all this for real, or just some kind of hell?" 666. I mean, this is like just so crazy. The number of the beast. I'll possess your body and make you burn in like the uh, plasma apocalypse, basically. So then when he's done with his song and they're all impressed that he's actually old Nick, he has this upside down cross too that he's put at the Skull Mountain. And by the way, I'm not saying any of this is good. I'm just showing you that there's good and evil in this world script, in the world script. I mean, it's in the Bible, it's in everything. So he says, behold, you are the fingers of my right hand. Your dark radiance blackens even sunlight. So this would be the opposite of what happens at the end of the Matrix, where, Neo's light brightens Smith's darkness, but since these people are all about darkness, he's like, your darkness blackens the light, so it's like the opposite. So he notices, Ralph notices that Spike is this one here who obviously doesn't want to be going along with any of this. He's just being forced into it, or they'll kill him. So he arranges this trick basically where he says, um, "Okay, now because you're my son, like Jesus, you're going to have to be crucified." So Jimmy's like, "What are you talking about?" So he's like, "Your followers are going to crucify you now." So he was trying to, get rid of this Jimmy guy because he's so evil. But then Jimmy, ends up stabbing him, and this is like being stabbed with the spear, like how Jesus was on the cross. And this being stabbed in the middle side area is something that happens to a lot of Jesus or Christ or Antichrist characters in these stories. And so Jimmy dies, and a few of the other people die, and basically all that's left is Spike and this girl who was kind of like not so bad. So Spike's saying, I'm sorry to him. He's like, it's okay. So this girl's like, you're not old Nick. So he says, no, nothing is, no one is. So this is actually a very interesting thing to say too, because I think this is one of the big possibilities of our world where yes, we are being like, psychically influenced from the outside, but perhaps, it is just humans here. And like all this, devil stuff and secret society stuff, it's really just humans. That's one of the big possibilities. It's also possible that they're, fallen angels or reptilian shapeshifters or, whatever. We just don't know. But it is also very possible that it is just humans being influenced in all different kinds of ways. And he says, there's just us. So she says, "Well, you put on a good show," and this is like how the people who run the world put on a good show, like in that movie Society that I talked about in the first live stream. Like it's literally just like a bunch of people putting on a show. Like Trump is just playing the role of the Antichrist on the world stage, that type of thinking. So he's like, "Well, why don't you just let us leave?" So he's like, "Well, I saw it was you, Spike, behind the mask, and I think you've suffered enough." So now he's becoming more Christ-like, even though he represented like, the atheist doctor, he's now sacrificed himself for, the hero of the story. He says, "You've suffered enough, so I'll die for you." So then she says, "Well, old Nick or not, there's something I could do." And they end up crucifying this Jimmy character upside down on the Skull Mountain. I don't want to get too into that. Then this zombie comes back and he's actually returned to being a human. And he says thank you to the doctor as he's dying, and he says memento mori while he's up against this skull mountain. That's the MM. And then he exhales and dies, and his spirit ascends up. And then the two heroes, Spike and the girl, they end up at this Paradise Mountain Island. So those movies are very dark. I'm not recommending necessarily watching them unless you don't mind that kind of stuff. But you could see how it's incredible. The symbolism in those movies is really incredible, and it's all on point with all the other stuff we've been talking about in all these live streams. I mean, it's I would say it's what do they say, a preponderance of evidence. It's overwhelming, the symbolism. So getting into Mega Man here finally. So hopefully the stream doesn't get cut off soon. So Mega Man, of course, the MM, the in blue with the beam. This is the the American cover for the first Mega Man, which is notoriously one of the worst covers ever made. This game I had Mega Man 2, so I don't notice any Mandela effecting going on with any of these titles, which is one of the reasons I wanted to show it to you guys. Mega Man 3, I also had this one, and I don't notice anything about it that I would say is a Mandela effect. But Mega Man 4, interestingly enough, this is definitely a Mandela effect where these little pieces were taken out of these letters. I call it like a missing pieces pattern, and also the A's here have a little piece like notched off of them, and I think the 4 probably was more connected down here too. And then Mega Man 5, this was the font, but these A's were normal A's. They weren't these open delta shapes like we see with a lot of other Mandela effects, like the Star Trek Next Generation logo, and a bunch of others. Transformers has this now too. And Mega Man 6 also has the open delta A's, and the E is weird too. It's got like this broken part, and the end I think goes down farther. It almost looks like it changed a little since I last looked at it because I don't remember the end going down farther when I looked at it just like a couple days ago. So that's why I bring a lot of these logos to your guys' attention because if you're carefully observing them, you'll actually see them change. So Mega Man X came out after that. So of course we got X for the North Pole. This is like the MM. You even got the Kraken on the cover. But also these A's have changed to the open delta shapes. And notice the E is connected normally here. But also, if you like turn the box this way, you basically have the blue beam firing up through the Kraken, which is typical symbolism for these things. And what's also interesting too is in Japan, when Mega Man was released, it was known as Rockman. So again, just like how Mad Max, the MM, his name was like Rockatansky, so they're associating the rock with the MM because it's the Black Rock Mountain. So again, here we have now, of course, they'll say that he's named Rockman after rock and roll, but I think it's much deeper than that. He's named after the Black Rock Mountain at the North Pole. And and think about it too, like these words here, this is in Japanese, this is in English. It's not like this is like some Japanese word for rock or something. It's in English. So it's just like, Rockatansky and Mad Max, like I showed you. And just for your reference, these are the six main Rockman games that came out in Japan. And I don't see any Mandela effecting going on. So just bringing that up. So the two main like side characters, you have Dr. Light, who of course would be like God, and then you have Dr. Wily, who would be, of course, like the Devil Kraken character. And if you're interested in looking them up, it's Dr. Light, Dr. Wily. This is a huge video game series. I also played it a lot when I was a kid. So here, this is from Mega Man 2. It's this is Wily's castle, and it's the Skull Castle, and it's also got the big W on it, which you'll often see with these. When like the Antichrist rules, it seems like it's the W instead of the M in a lot of cases, because that's the upside down inverted M. And a lot of these characters, like Willy Wonka, Walter White from Breaking Bad. I just showed you a WW in one of the, I think 28 weeks later they had that. So it's just something to keep in mind, but also the Skull Mountain, of course. And also this looks like the Twin Pillars too. And there's a bunch of shapes here that are interesting as well. It's also the communications tower and the needle too. There's a lot. But this is another. I think this is Mega Man 3. What the Skull Castle looks like. There's always like a Wily's Skull Castle, and but they have like different shapes and stuff. And let's see. Oh, and so at the end of Mega Man 2, one of the first boss battles you have to play against is this dragon, and this dragon was Mandela affected. So this dragon used to be all green, but now it's got these blue like shoulders or like hinges. I'm not sure what to call them exactly, but it didn't have these blue pieces to it. So it's like the dragon is turning more blue, perhaps. But I played this dragon a bunch of times, and it did not have these parts. It was all green. So here in Mega Man 2, when you go through Wily's castle, this is basically like going through the maze under the mountain. And then when you get to this last part here, this skull under the ground, you fall through this abyss area. And you basically just keep falling and falling and falling. And then you get to the bottom and you have to fight this last Dr. Wily, incarnation. And he transforms into an alien. So he's like a shapeshifter. So when you beat this alien, you find out that the whole thing was just a hologram and it was fake. And he was just Dr. Wily the whole time. And what do they show? They show this giant apex dome looking shape at the top where this all this like, fakery is coming from, all this stuff to influence our minds, like the psychic signal or whatever you want to call it, like that we've been talking about. Like the Kraken signal, and it's got this weird, ball in the center. And then this thing here, it floats around in the same way that the alien was floating around, showing that it was just a hologram. And then when it's defeated, it turns black and white and then blue. And it's like reflecting now these, blue beams into the apex dome. And then Dr. Wily is defeated. And then Mega Man ends up in basically paradise. And he no longer has to fight. And then even at the end of the game, they show this staff, and it's like the blue beam. Like if you hold it this way, and they have the credits playing over this blue beam. And this is interesting too. This is Mega Man 3. So I think that they picked these robot names on purpose, of course, but also for the world script. So the thing that made me think about this was I noticed they had Needle Man and Magnet Man on the same stage here. So I was like, well, what about these other names? So you have Gemini Man. This is for the twins. You have Shadow Man. So this is like the left pillar, basically. Like how in like Zelda, like Link has to face like Shadow Link. We have to face our shadow selves, like at the waterfall of truth and in the mirror, that type of thing. Snake Man, this would be like a number of things, like you could think like the snake in the garden, but also like the plasma, and then Spark Man, the sparks come up constantly, like I was talking about with the pineal organ and the sparks causing, evolution. And Hardman, interestingly enough, I think he was originally known as Press Man or Stamp Man, but they changed it to Hardman. But his whole thing is like he like stamps down. So I wonder if that's like a Mark of the Beast type of thing. And then his main attack is like a jab. And then Top Man, it's about like spinning or spiraling, but also the top is a big world script word, frankly, like getting to the top of the mountain. And I've talked about that in the past too. Like you'll when you see the word top, I know it's like a simple word, but just keep it in mind. Like like when you see a needle, when you see the word top, just put it in context of the world script, and you'll begin to see what they're talking about with that word. But just saying that, I think it's interesting how I think they chose all these because they represent this time period that we're in. So in the Super Mario Brothers movie, you have the MM also, of course, the giant M. But Mario, his last name is Mario, which is ridiculous. But his name is basically Mario Mario. But that's the MM, of course. And I've talked about this a lot. I don't want to get too overly into it. But this movie is filled with world script symbolism. It predicted Trump and all that. Trump is basically Koopa. They have the vote for Koopa. I've talked about this in the past too. Dennis Hopper even looks basically just like Trump. Like, there's no reason to make Koopa look like this. This isn't anything from the video games. And then they even have the Twin Towers turning into this. And at the end of the story, they have the princess with the plasma, and they're basically on top of a dome that also looks like an eclipse. And then the dome shoots the blue beam up from the center. So I mean, it's just one thing after another with these movies, but they also have the MM symbolism with Mario. And just real quick too, The Wicker Man. This is a movie I would highly recommend watching, especially if you're interested in like that Epstein stuff. And like I was talking about with like society, how people are basically just putting on an act, and like the whole world is a stage basically. Um, this cop goes to this island to investigate a missing girl, and everyone on the island just lies to his face and says the girl never existed. And um, it's like our world, like you try to get the truth out of someone like Trump or Elon Musk or any of these, Steven Spielbergs or Stephen Kings, and they're just going to lie to your face. And this title also was Mandela affected. I have this old VHS tape, and the letters weren't as long as this, like they weren't as extended. And again, the A is almost making like this delta shape. Now, I'm not 100% sure what it means, but I do remember it being like a normal A. And then this poster I haven't seen before, so I can't claim it, but it also looks Mandela affected to me. Like, look at the W being strange. It's like two different shaped V's. And then this part here with the K going into the E, going into the R. This looks very Mandela affected as well. And this also is all representative of that Burning Man, if you're familiar with that, which lasted for 33 years. And it's all about, this Phoenix resurrection and all that. Here's another poster for it. Now, this doesn't look Mandela affected to me. I've never seen this poster either. So I'm just saying maybe keep an eye on it and it might change. And this is like a newer poster for the 50th anniversary. And notice how they have the pyramidal design too. And I don't see any Mandela affecting with this name either. But also, interesting stuff to look at. But this is the cop that goes to the island to investigate, and he's looking for the daughter of Mae Morrison. So there's the MM, and that's this woman. And then this woman just lies right to his face and says, she never had a daughter with the name, I think Rowan is the name he's looking for, Rowan Morrison. And she's like, "Nope," and she has, like, a different daughter now, and she's like, "No, this is my daughter." And, everyone that he questions and talks to on this island, they're all just lying to his face. And then at the end of the movie, he gets put into that, Wicker Man statue, and it's revealed that the whole thing was just an act. They were lying to him on purpose, to get to a certain end. And I don't want to get too into it, but Wicker, I'll talk about it again when I get into like the Burning Man Phoenix type symbolism. But again, too, with Harry Potter towards the end of this series or this story, you have the blue beam wand here, and then of course the right and left pillars, the Christ character and the Antichrist character. And one of the characters is Minerva McGonagall, and she's of course the MM. She also she's the professor of transfiguration, which is extremely interesting. She also, let's see. So at the beginning of the last movie, just to show you the wand, um, Voldemort raids the grave of essentially the God character, Dumbledore, and takes the blue beam for himself. And then he has the blue beam and he shoots it up from this, central island into the sky. So this would be like the blue beam shooting up into the apex dome. But also, in this last movie, Snape, and I get that Snape is like a secret, good guy or whatever, but he's ruling the North Pole Central Castle like the Antichrist. Everything's dark and depressing, and all the people are scared. And he's, all the students have their heads down and they're scared, and everything's, black and dark. But then he gets chased away by, Harry and the heroes come, but also the MM character. She chases away the Antichrist rule in favor of the coming, Christ rule. And he goes flying out of the glass. So we have the broken glass, like the broken dome, and then she becomes the headmistress of the North Pole Castle. So we have the MM, ruling this area. And then while she's doing that, the teachers put up these blue beams that create the dome, the protective dome over the Camp of the Saints, and we have the spiral staircase and all that. And also in the Harry Potter story is they have the Ministry of Magic. So again, we have another MM, symbol, and the symbol for the Ministry of Magic is this giant M. And of course, this is like a magic wand, but it's like the blue beam with the eternal light shooting up through the center of the mountain. So it's all the same symbolism with everything. And I'll be ending this with Stranger Things. So the newest season is this season 5. Of course, this villain is the main, Kraken, hive mind, devil entity, Antichrist. And this is him in his human form. And he's tricking this Alice in Wonderland character into going into his house. So he's taking her into the devil's house, and they're doing the M handhold as they walk up the stairs. And then he basically tries, so he's like, stealing their loose energy, like basically. And so she's in the devil's house, and while she's in there, she finds some things to help her escape. And one of the things she finds is this Captain Midnight's spy scope. So she's playing with the scope, and it has this interesting cap on the end, which I'll get into a little bit later. And then she also goes out and she realized that there's mail in the mailbox. Just one second. So this is also a Mandela effect, in my opinion. This "You've Got Mail" poster. So it's also a Tom Hanks movie, and he's highly connected to the Mandela effect. Practically everything he's done is Mandela affected, and these words are all merged together. Like I don't see why they would have this merging together. Like this isn't a movie that I saw, but I've seen this poster, and I don't remember these words being all merged together like this. Also got the blue and yellow symbolism too with the mail, and it's like what we were talking about too with being connected to God. It's like we've got mail. We're receiving these communications from God, not in like word form, but like in connection form, epiphany form, idea form, and it's like us getting mail, in our heads basically. So she's getting this. She opens the mailbox and gets this letter, and it says that it basically tells her to go to the X at the mountain. So she has to follow this path and get to this X at the rocks, which is basically like saying go to the North Pole. So she's traveling to the North Pole. She goes by these scorpions, which is again like a biblical reference, and then she finds this mountain, and it's split in the center. So she finds the split North Pole mountain, and then there's a cave where she can go into, and inside of this cave, the Antichrist villain, this he's afraid to go there. So it's a place where she can be, saved and protected. But at first, she's scared to go in there herself because there's someone in there, but it's not the Antichrist or the devil Kraken character. So she runs away and she's hiding from whoever came out, but it's this character Max Mayfield. So you have this character who was in the Split Mountain Cave, and she helps guide this Alice character back home. So if you're interested, this is the Max Mayfield character, the and she was also when she was first introduced, she was in the arcade beating some of the main characters' records, and she was using the name Mad Max. So of course, people would say like, well, this is just a reference to 80s movies. Stranger Things is filled with references to all these different 80s things, but it is that, of course, but it's also them taking all this Mad Max symbolism that's been built up with those movies and adding it onto all the Max Mayfield symbolism that's in Stranger Things. So that's why they use similar actors for similar roles, or the same actor for similar roles in different projects, because they're like compounding those spells and connections and things that they've already established in previous movies. So this harkens back to Mad Max, of course. And they're also playing this game called Dragon's Lair, which is like Dragon Slayer, the movie, which is also Mandela affected. These letters are all merged together, and there's some other things happening there too. This A is like that weird side or angled like delta shape, which I'm not sure what that means yet. But in this game, you play as the hero, like a King Arthur. You're fighting the dragon, and here's the blue beam with the sword and the stone. It's actually a sword and a crystal, and then you have to rescue the yellow and blue princess. I've shown that before too, so I don't want to get too off into it. But then in this Stranger Things 4, you have the X poster here and the Plasma Apocalypse, basically, and the L characters. This is like, the Christ character versus the Antichrist as usual. And then you have the Upside Down. So in this fourth season, you have Max Mayfield. She's in this cemetery. And this cemetery is called Roan Hill. And Roan, interesting. It's like a cemetery, for her because while she's there, let me show here. I guess this is like an eclipse happening. I'm forgetting, but she ends up, having to face this Antichrist character on like a spiritual level. Let's see. I have the. This is how he's found usually, like in the like, spider lair with all the tentacles. So she's like being like possessed by him at this point. I notice how she's wearing like the yellow, blue, and white jacket. Here we have the character in the one of the main characters Christ is generally happening. So he's calling for communications of the mist. Put this together. Sorry, I'm also getting kind of tired. Let's get through this fast. So we have like the red, the plasma apocalypse. I mean, at this point, I think you guys can kind of see what I'm showing you without me even having to describe it. So she's in this like mental world, and this is, of course, is like the red world. Things are floating. This would be what happens at Armageddon. You have the red Kraken plasma coming down. She's in the Black Mirror. There's spiders all over the ground. She gets wrapped up in tentacles of the Kraken, and they're trying to break her out of this possession with this music communication. So they put these headphones on her to try to give her a way out. So she's being imprisoned here by the Antichrist Kraken, but then she sees this portal open in that world, and her friends are playing her this song that she hears, and she has now a way out of the hell world. So in my opinion, this is what Jesus is doing for us. So like we're basically trapped in this hell world. We're basically like this right now, and we have this Kraken Antichrist entity that's running everything, and Jesus is offering us through our third eye portal this music, this truth, this way out of this hell world into his world. So she sees this portal, and there's nothing he can do about it. And the song that they play is called "Running Up That Hill: A Deal with God." So, a lot of very interesting symbolism in this song, especially this part too, where they're saying, you know, she'll be running up that road, running up that hill, running up that building, and it's basically saying that all these are the same things, and it's like the 3 pillars, you know, they're like the roads, they're also the mountains, they're also, you know, the buildings like the, Twin Towers. You know, it's like the 3 pillars that I often talk about in my, videos. And just in case you can't see, I know the 3 often gets cut off by my, camera, but, you have, like, the 3, 6, 9, so 3 would be, like, the Christ right pillar, 6 would be the Antichrist left pillar, and then 9 would be the top, um, of the central pillar. So, again, you know, like, the top, like we talked about, and 6 is the double of 3, so this is why you often see the double or the imposter, um, on the left, the Antichrist doing that, and it's also the inversion or the upside down of the 9. You know, so it's like the imposter, you know, inversion of God also. And I've talked about this a lot too. I don't want to make this stream too long. It's already over 2 hours. But yeah, I mean, like, just check out my previous videos on all these pillars. Check out my JFK Tree of Life video if you're interested in this, because this shows how the streets are like the pillars. So you have like, this is the route map for where JFK was assassinated allegedly. But if you flip it, you know, you could see how it's like the trident and the 3 pillars. So, like, Main Street is like the central pillar, and then Elm Street is like the right pillar, and then Commerce Street is like the left pillar. And I explained this a lot, you know, in my previous, streams. I don't wanna get too off topic here. I put these in before I had so many images in this folder, but, also, I mean, it's good to think on this stuff on your own, frankly. So like this is where the Nightmare on Elm Street comes into play, and also Hazel Fiver. Definitely check out his channel and subscribe to him if you haven't. He has a lot of videos on this Nightmare on Elm Street, on these Mandela effects and their connection with the JFK Mandela effects, because he was shot on Elm Street, and that's not just some random coincidence. So yeah, we have all the blue symbolism. The blue, now in Nightmare on Elm Street, in case you're not familiar with it, the main character is Door, changed from red to blue. Freddy's often symbolic of the needles. I don't want to get too into it, but also about these like streets, you know, running up that hill, running up that road. You know, this ties in also with like Mad Max, like the Road Warrior. And this is the logo of the Road Warrior when you, if you watch the movie, and it's definitely Mandela affected. Like, these letters were not connected like this. So like the H and the E weren't like, this is really weird. The A and the D, and then you have the ARRI all connected. It wasn't like that. This looks crazy. But also we have Country Roads, which used to be Country Road. That's a big Mandela effect. You guys might not be familiar with. Check out, I think Hazel Fiver has a video on this one, but it was Take Me Home Country Road, not Roads. But also Streets of Rage. This was a video game that I had as a kid, and also so we have the Rage again, and the Streets, and this is Mandela affected too. Like, there's a lot of these like offshoots off these letters, and the S's did not have this like curling up, you know, offshoot or whatever you want to call it, like a tail. But it also kind of looks like eights, you know. So you know, and I'm like piecing this stuff together too. I'm not saying I have all the answers. So like at the end of Back to the Future, you know, you have the Streets of Fire, you know, so, and then that's at the 88 miles an hour, you know. So are these making an 88? You know, is that part of this message? You know, it's possible. Here's Streets of Rage 2. Same thing. You know, these S's didn't curl up like this. It looks like eights. Same thing with Streets of Rage 3. The Streets of Fire, this was also Mandela affected. A lot of these letters are merged here. And I don't remember these up and down arrows. And we got, you know, rock and roll. We also have, of course, the union of male and female, but also this is like the end of Back to the Future as well, the Streets of Fire. And Street Fighter, this is Mandela affected as well. There's a couple different logos for Street Fighter. You have the R's, you know, extended down, which is common, and then some letters merging, like the H and the T. Here's another one where he is like just way higher for some reason. And just I can't like say exactly all the different changes to these logos, but they just look very different to me. Um, like the H going into the T, that looks so weird. The extended R's look weird. The movie Street Fighter, just to show you. And also, it's good to keep a lot of these logos in mind because they could change again. Like I've seen logos change multiple times, but this just looks different to me. Like, especially like I said, this connection here and the extended R's. And another street related change. This is 100% change for me. Is Mean Streets. This is an old Martin Scorsese movie. But again, you have the streets, but this is all merged together. Like especially the E and the A. Like this is crazy. And there used to be a gap between mean and streets, and just there's merging all over the place with that logo. And Nightmare on Elm Street. I even think that this Nightmare here, this looks like it got like merged and like more blocky. It's almost difficult to read what this even says. It wasn't like this blocky of lettering. Like look how blocky like the bottom of this E is. It wasn't like that either. And also the letter A was added because it was just Nightmare on Elm Street. It wasn't a Nightmare on Elm Street. People just abbreviated it like NOES. And also like some of these other letters here too. Like this is weird. Like the L is kind of low. Like they're not like all straight across. So I feel like that's part of the change too. And here's all the different logos for the movies if you're interested in checking them. Miracle on 34th Street. Oh, I think this one had the letter A in the front, like it's like the opposite. Like it was a Miracle on 34th Street, but now it's just Miracle on 34th Street. And I think Hazel Pfeiffer has a video on this one too. And he's also got a video on this one too, Dancing in the Street versus I think Dancing in the Streets. So a lot of like street, road related Mandela effects. Here's David Bowie's Dancing in the Street. And the Wall Street bull, it no longer has like the nose ring. And this one I just wanted to post here because there isn't a Mandela effect or anything, but the word wolf, world street, and even possibly the word wall, but definitely wolf and street. These are big keywords of the world script and the Mandela effect. So I'm just saying, like, these letters are very blocky, they're very separated. There's like no, artistic flourishes or anything. So if anything changes on this logo, it'll be really easy to tell. So I'm just saying, something to keep in mind. Mad Max, Mad Max 2. So I'm just showing these logos. All right. So anyway, back to Stranger Things. You have the Kraken hand over her while she's imprisoned, and then while she's being possessed here, she rises up like the blue beam, and she has the blue beam coloring. But notice too, like her arms are down, and I think that another important symbol because when arms are up, I think it's more like the Christ pose, and when arms are down, this would be more like an Antichrist type of pose because she's this obviously isn't a Christ-like thing going on. She's being possessed by the Kraken, so she's floating up though, like the blue beam, but then she gets saved and falls from the communication with the song. Here she is running towards that portal, and then she, wakes up and snaps out of it. It's actually a pretty awesome scene if you haven't seen it. So here the characters are deciding what to do to try to combat this, Antichrist Kraken entity. This painting in the background too is very like North Pole looking, like with the central mountain and the four continents inside the circle. But just saying it might be. So Max is watching. So they come up with this plan where Max is going to go into that devil's house, and notice the W again too. They make a big point of showing the W. And her and Lucas's sister all go into this devil's house with their lanterns. And as they're walking in, you can see that it's in the X, just like we saw in the Matrix and a ton of other things. So we're at the North Pole location at the central house. And here we have the character with the blue lantern, the blue light. And it's hard to see, but her socks are like the Adidas socks, so there's like the 33 symbolism as well. And the name Lucas means light also. Like it isn't like just like a Lucifer thing. Like Luke, like Luc, that means light. You know, so she's with the light. And here I show you. Lucas means bringer of light, luminous. And his sister's name is Erica, so she also has a powerful name too. It means eternal ruler or ever powerful. You know, so Max is with the blue beam. Also, oh, this Sinclair translates to holy light, and Claire means clear, bright, illustrious. So you have the MM with the blue beam in the devil's house, and they can't talk or else this entity will hear them. So they're writing to each other. So she says, "I'm glad you're here." So he's like, "Hey, you want to see a movie Friday?" So she makes this drawing of them at like a movie theater, but notice how it's them doing the M handhold. And this character L, she's going to try to help them from like this what do you call it? Where she's like sensory deprivation chamber, basically, where her powers are enhanced. So Max is basically waiting to confront this Antichrist, Kraken with the blue light and all that. And here he found her, and now she's being possessed by him, and she has L to help her. And this character L, or this actress L, she was also in this movie Damsel, which interestingly enough has the EL at the end of the title too. And her name in Damsel is LOD. Again, she's L, and she's also holding up the blue lantern. Oh, here's the poster for Damsel. It's also got like the blue beam, the dragon inside the cave, and all that. And in this movie, she has to make a leap of faith over the abyss to get to this blue light that ends up saving her. So she gets this blue light. She's holding the lantern. So I'm just saying, like, how similar. And like this is what I was saying too, where they use the same actors in different roles, but it's really the same roles. They keep like adding more and more emphasis to this like spellcraft. So she's got the light. I don't want to get like too into the. Oh, interesting that one of them is named Artemis. These are like the old princesses who went through this whole ritual with the dragon under the cave. If you've seen, I recommend watching this movie Damsel. Actually, it's it's not like a great movie, but it's the world scripting is just like off the charts. And I've talked about it too in the past. So anyway, she's looking at like this mural with the blue beam with the blue lantern or the blue beam light, and she sees like the dead world tree, which is where she started her journey, and then she has to go up through the crystal cave, and then here at the crystal cave, this is the portal, and this is where she hears like the music from, which is just like what happened in Stranger Things, where she hears the music through the portal. And this is us basically being saved by Jesus through our third eye, through the crystals in our own head, hearing his music of truth. And here we have her helping her. They go to like this dance hall inside their head basically to fight this kraken. So again, this is the dancing symbolism, like dancing with the devil and all that. These are kind of like the kraken tentacles. This is like being under the tent. And it's like Christ versus Antichrist on the world stage. Just one second. So again, he's got her with the kraken hand symbolism. And while this is going on, just one second, sorry. Almost done, but my voice is kind of giving out, I guess. So we have the red sky, the plasma apocalypse happening while all this is going on. An inversion too, because this guy's like in the Hellfire Club, but he's a good guy, so it's like they often do inversions in these stories too. But it's all the same symbolism. It's just up to you to discern whether something is good or bad, because that's like the ultimate thing. Like I said, like the world script is made up of basically numbers, symbols, shapes, and colors. But even ultimately beyond that, it's light and darkness, and or truth and lies, or good versus evil. So the L character here is, being imprisoned with the tentacles and all that. And she's trying to help. And this guy is relating his story of how he found the Kraken that like possessed him in the first place. And this Kraken is basically like this flying spaghetti monster type of entity that's floating in the sky. And he's also got like the spider symbolism going on, and the one eye symbolism. Of course, his left eye. He like his right eye was blinded, so he's left eye destroyer. And then this kraken comes down from the sky and possesses him, and he's like the main, antichrist villain of the series. So then she rises up again, and Elle saves her. While we have this whole crazy looking, plasma apocalypse thing happening of Christ versus Antichrist. And also, while this is happening, some of the other heroes in a different place, they're fighting one of the Kraken, beasts that's part of the hive mind. And Winona Ryder here, whose name is also Mandela affected, by the way, she's stabs it, or not stabs it, but she hits it with this spear. So she's got the blue beam spear basically that transfers this blue plasma at into it's like a cattle prod type of thing, but what it symbolizes is the blue beam hitting through the kraken, and that saves him from that situation. And then he has to. This is the sheriff character. He has to face whose name is Hopper, like the rabbit, and he has to face this other kraken entity in this like stadium, and he picks up this sword, because you have to face the kraken with the sword, and he ends up decapitating it or something. And then we have L versus the Kraken, Christ versus Antichrist, the Blue Beam, the Devil's House. So here we have when this all happens. So Max actually dies, but then she's resurrected. So again, we have the MM character being resurrected, just like we see in the Princess Bride. Although that's the MM character doing the resurrecting. But what I'm saying is, the MM character is often associated with resurrection, like Mary Mastrantonio in The Abyss. She dies and then is resurrected, brought back to life. The same thing happens here. But when Max dies, it completes this ritual that the Antichrist was doing. So now he's able to bring like this hell world to this world, and it creates this giant X over the land. See, like this big X, and at the center there's a building like the North Pole building, and they're in the Black Mirror, and then Elle resurrects her. She gets her heart to start again, and they're like thinking about hanging out in the past, like just the good memories and stuff. And I'm sure that these two comic books are very important. You could look into it. I mean, there's always like an endless amount of symbolism and detail you can look into in these things, and certain people resonate with different things. But also they have like this Vesica Pisces poster here, Endless Summer. This would be like paradise, and the two of them are like under the dome together. So she brings her back to life, but she's in this coma in the hospital, even though she was brought back to life. And here we have the handhold on the wall. Lucas has his left eye blackened out because he's a good character, even though he has like the Lucifer name. But that's also part of the story too, is the left pillar being turned to good, like how Smith is turned from darkness to light. And this character Lucas, he actually originally hated L. It took a while for him to, see the light basically, and start liking her like a friend. So also we see, it's the opposite of the villain. So his left eye was blacked out, but the villain's right eye was blinded. So then eventually she wakes up and she comes back to life in the newest season. I think down here it says Speed Queen, weirdly enough. But what's interesting about that is it has like the double E's, like the 33, 33. I think that's probably why they put it there. So going back to this, and this will be the end of this presentation. The Alice character, she's looking at the end of that looking glass that she found, and it has the split mountain cutout. And she realizes that she has to hold it in the right place to find what they're looking for, to find the exit home. So she finds the right place to stand, where this lines up perfectly with the cave in the mountain. And then she falls through the ground. And this is like what I showed you in Cabin in the Woods, where the heroes have to go under the North Pole mountain to find the truth. So you could say they're at the North Pole mountain because she's at the right spot of the split mountain, and then she goes underground. and then Max, saves her from falling, but there's a ladder that they climb down into, and the two of them are looking down into the abyss, basically. So they go down in there to find the truth, and what they find is this is that Henry Antichrist character when he was a kid, and this is how he became the Kraken entity that he is now. He started off actually as a good kid, and finds this. He was like a Boy Scout, and he finds this guy who tries to shoot him to keep him away from him. He doesn't realize what's going on, so he kills that guy, and then he takes the briefcase and opens it, and inside the briefcase is all this mist. So this is like the North Pole, and then it's the black rock with the red plasma inside. So this is symbolic of the North Pole mountain, the Rupus Nigra. And notice how it has the red, like glowing M at the bottom. And he sees this, and then it starts, possessing him. And they zoom into his left eye portal. This is the pillar of destruction because he becomes the Kraken's main tool. And so he goes we go into this portal into the red world, and this is where like the Kraken exists in this abyssal area. And it's like this, flying spaghetti monster, as Jay puts it. Like that's also like a big joke on atheists, frankly. So like atheists, they joke and say like their god is the flying spaghetti monster, and they don't realize that that's actually a joke on them. Like they're saying their god is the Kraken because the flying spaghetti monster is going to be this thing that actually appears on Earth during Armageddon. That's going to have these red plasma tentacles shooting down all over the Earth. And this would be like what you're seeing here, and this entity calls out to him and possesses him, and then out of the black rock shoots all these plasma red tentacles, and they go into this wound in his left hand, and it's important too, right and left. And now he's possessed by it, and then at the end of the movie they go to this giant Kraken castle where it becomes this giant spider. It's like a hand, it's like a spider. This is like a looks like a hand, like a skeleton hand. This is when it becomes like a spider because all these symbols represent the same thing. And this is the giant Kraken entity attacking them. And then we have El, who's standing against the devil. So it's like, God versus the devil, Christ versus Antichrist. And then she jumps up and shoots through the center of the Kraken, jumps through the Vesica Pisces portal into it. And then she sees the Antichrist Kraken hanging at the top here at this like apex dome looking area, and she breaks all his tentacles and he falls. And then we have El versus Henry, or Christ versus Antichrist, and this is how the story ends, and they fight, and then he ends up getting speared through the center, which is what happens to the Kraken, the blue beam. So she basically represents the blue beam, and she's shot through the Kraken entity, but again we have the blue beam spear shooting through the Kraken. And then the whole thing falls, and the heroes are basically standing at the split mountain, and she's standing here watching him basically die as he's speared through the center. And then this apex dome heart looking thing dries up, and it's no longer it loses the Antichrist power. And just real quick to show you, there's multiple things in these stories, especially if it's a longer story like Stranger Things. So this character, he's like the head scientist who oversaw her whole program where she was like, doing like telepathic things and whatnot for the government. And he's Matthew Modine, and he was cast on purpose because he's representative of like, this Antichrist control over this central North Pole area. So here's, Matthew Modine, and this, building that he oversees is a giant X for the North Pole. It's also got the communications tower. Like this looks like the dish on top of the Skull Mountain in that Mega Man game that I showed you. So it's all connected. It's all the same symbolism. I'm not going to go into detail on Matthew Modine. I'm just saying that that's all on purpose. And here they are doing the M handhold under the domes, or the dome and layers, And that's it. And my voice is totally shot. We got it in under 3 hours at least. Let me check in with the chat. Sorry, I'm not going to be able to hang around too much just because of my voice. It doesn't look like there's too much activity. Let's see. Just say, talk to you guys a little bit before I leave. Oh, nice. Pushin has the Room T-shirt. Yeah, I've seen the Room a bunch of times with my friends. It's so funny. If you If you're into, like, funny bad movies or, laughing at that type of thing, if you haven't seen The Room with, Tommy Wiseau, you definitely need to check it out. It's one of the funniest things ever made. Unintentionally funny. Yeah, that's interesting, Nick being spelled with a K like magic. There might be something there. The Septentrio for sure. Those are the, mountains at the North Pole area. Yeah, recovering from mandatory amnesia. The Prisoner show is what some of the Iron Maiden song comes from. I didn't know that, that's interesting. It's, Narmush saying that. Yeah, I've seen, The Prisoner. I haven't seen every episode, but I've seen a bunch of it. They also, the reason I even heard of it in the first place was because the Mr. X episode of The Simpsons, does, like, a parody of it. It's actually really interesting, and it's Homer gets sent to that prisoner island because he makes up a bunch of stuff on the internet, but, one of the things he makes up is a fake, pan event that's going to need, like, a V and all that, and that's what gets him sent to the island because Matt Groening knows the world script, and it's all a big, joke, I guess. Hey, Andy, good to see you. Hey, Cosmic, Bougie. I'm not trying to say your name, but, it's good to see you too. Hey, Watchman, what's up, man? Good to see you. Always good to see you, Kimberly. Hey, Rolly, what's up, man? Yeah, these films are made by Gnostics who know this stuff. Watchman Nazar is saying. I don't it's a weird, situation. It's definitely strange. It's weird that the truth is presented to us in this way, but it also is I don't know. I mean, it's like these movies, for people who are asleep, they put them into deeper sleep and they possess them and put all kinds of black magic spells on them to follow along with the beast system and to get the V and the boosters and all that stuff. And there's definitely a lot of negativity, but then for people who do have the eyes to see and are spiritually awake, they offer the truth. So it's very interesting. Hey, I'm indoctrinated. Good to see you. Oh, there's 33 likes. Oh, we got 35 now. Yeah, I mean, I like the number 33. I think truthers um, I mean, like 33 is definitely used in like the fake news events and things like that, but that's because they're mocking or being like an imposter of Jesus. I think 33 is like the number of ascension. Like 66 would be the bad number or the evil twin number or whatever. That's why they do Order 66 in Star Wars, and then that makes the clones get taken over by their alternate personality that's like the Kraken hive mind. Hey, ex heliocentric, good to see you. Yeah, Jay did a, Truth in Movies on Damsel. That's actually where I heard of the movie in the first place. I never even had heard of it, but then after I watched his Truth in Movies on it, I was like, "Okay, I gotta watch this." And it's like they made the movie just to present the world script to us. It's weird. And also, like, some movies aren't really bad, like Lord of the Rings, like anyone watching Lord of the Rings, I don't really see how that puts any, black magic spells on them or anything. It's just, at the very basest level, it's, entertaining, I guess, without any negativity really, but then it's also filled with all these, truths for people who can see it. Yeah, Osiris rising is another meaning of X. Yeah, there's definitely something going on there. I don't really know enough about it though to comment on it. But of course, all the Egyptian mythology plays into all this as well. And one thing that's interesting too is Nut, Nut. She's like the sky goddess, and she's basically the dome. And I think that's also there's a lot of like figures of speech and stuff like that that reveal the world script. And like one of the things people say is like someone's like a tough nut to crack or something like that. But I think ultimately you could relate that to Newt. and then it's like, the dome is, the toughest thing to crack, because so many things like breaking through the glass ceiling, all that. It's all about the dome. Hey, Ghetto Twain Jr. Good to see you. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. The Montauk Project. I've heard of that. I just forget what it is. Oh, is that like what Elle is going through in Stranger Things? Yeah, yeah. Ghetto Twain is saying that he used to be an atheist and followed like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, and they were always talking about the spaghetti monster. Yeah. Uh, I was never like an atheist, but I was kind of like a agnostic. I always thought there was like a God and like a point to all this, but I never really gave it much thought beyond that up until around like 2018. I never read, the Bible or cared about religion or spirituality. I thought the third eye stuff was dumb. I thought the chakra stuff was dumb. Oh, thanks, guys. Really appreciate you all being here. Yep. Yeah, the highest glass ceiling for sure. Okay, pushing. I'll check that out. All right, guys. Well, my voice is pretty shot, so I'll leave it there, and I'll just say, until next time, I wish you all the best of luck and God bless.